end of time.
O'clock.
Well, hey, you guys. Look, we're both in the frame today.
Yeah, I'm going to see how far off.
Tom's not in the next video. You're in this video
in
today.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's good. I'm glad you chose to join us in this video.
Got the damn command center set up here.
Yeah, the command center.
Like a control room.
Got the booze, got the tablet,
got
the table.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
We don't need a lot of stuff.
I think I can go over here and still be in. Okay, yeah.
Okay. I mean, your head's
All right.
kind of out.
All right. I can always just move the control panels closer. All right.
Sorry, I was laughing at Murder Hornet's comment, who said, "I'd let Patty Hearst shoot me. She's still hot."
I haven't seen a picture of her in a long time. She's got to be older than my mom. We talking.
She's 60. She's in her 60s, I guess, late 60s, maybe early 70s.
Okay.
You know what I
younger than my
mean?
mom.
She still looks all right.
Okay.
I
haven't
thought.
seen her.
I mean, I don't know when the picture I saw of her was, but it looked
Right.
fairly recent.
Okay.
So she still looks decent.
Maybe she's gonna be watching.
I hope not.
We're gonna
No,
get
well, I'm gonna say okay. I watched a bunch of different documentaries about this. There's actually like a really good one on YouTube, which is called Gorilla, and it's about an hour and a half long. And that one's really good. And then there's like a couple other ones that like other YouTubers have done. And I don't know, like I've read a lot of stuff from both sides, because I know there's like, if you weren't around in the 70s, this was like a big fucking deal. Like this kid, I was just a little kid in the 70s, but man, I even remember hearing about this, like a few years later. And there's still to this day, I mean, I don't think anyone will ever know, I mean, except her, maybe, but there's still a lot of controversy over whether she, was basically forced into doing what she did, or if she did it voluntarily and then later when she got caught tried to make it seem like she was forced.
And she was from a rich family, very rich. It's an oligarch level family.
Yeah.
Did she join this outfit, and then when they got busted, talk her way out of it? Oh, they abducted me and brainwashed me. Or was she brainwashed? It wasn't just forced. The story that she tells constitutes brainwashing.
Because she was with, I don't know if you guys know this, but it wasn't just like the bank robbery and all that stuff. She was with them for like 2 years. Yeah. Almost. Or like 18 months or something like that, like before they caught her. And it's like she had, and this was something that they used a lot at her trial, was that, she had ample opportunities to leave, to escape. She had a lot of opportunity to do that, and she never did. Yeah. And the fact that she sent all these communiques like to her parents, like denouncing them and calling them pigs and all this other kind of stuff. Yeah. They're kind of like, I mean, okay, I don't want to like shit so much on brainwashing and Stockholm syndrome and stuff like that, because we'll get into all that stuff before. And the weird thing about it is that one of her supporters, actually, I guess, sort of, was John Wayne, because he came out, like, especially after the whole Jonestown thing happened, and he's like, oh, well, why do people find it so hard to believe that this one group had brainwashed this 19-year-old girl when everybody believed that Jim Jones had brainwashed 900-odd people into killing themselves? Yeah. Which is a good point, really.
Well, the Duke is saying right. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a good audio book on YouTube that you can watch. Came out in the 50s. I'm listening to it. I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. It's called Rape of the Mind. And it's a book about brainwashing and how it works. How the Nazis used it and how the communists used it. And communist Chinese, the Russians. And yeah, it tells you the symptoms, how it's done, the mechanisms by which you do it, why it works, and how long does it work. And if you brainwash a person, you're basically using guilt. You're using their own guilt and their own self-doubt against them. And you have to do a bunch of other stuff to them. You got to dehumanize them. It's basically torture. And then you break them down to nothing, and you slowly kind of build them back up and make them see the world as you see it. Or as you see the world as maybe you want them to see it. And as long as they're in your direct sphere, and you can keep them guilty for the crimes that you've convinced them that they've done, you can keep them under control. you can get them to do things.
Which may have been the case here.
Right.
Or, like I said, there could be a thing where Stockholm Syndrome, where she did genuinely start to sympathize with her captors, which is sort of the same thing, but not exactly the same thing.
Yeah, although Stockholm Syndrome, it talks about it in the book, all the data suggests that women fall to Stockholm Syndrome faster than men. And it's some kind of evolutionary adaptation in women, probably from a time when, in tribal times, where you're with your wife and your husband and your kids, a new group of men come in, they kill your husband and your kids. Maybe they keep some of the female children alive, and then you get handed over to one of the conquerors. Then all of a sudden, it's called trauma-based mind control. That's a traumatic event. But then you start seeing it through the eyes of the attacker. Like, well, my husband couldn't protect me. He was weaker than this group here. And the boys that they killed would have been weak like my husband. The daughters that I have will marry the new strong males, and I'll bond with them. That's the same thing that happens in the animal kingdom with damn lions and primates and shit. So I don't think it's a human adaptation. I think it's just from the animal kingdom. Now, it wouldn't work in the modern world today when there's so many choices, but in medieval times or tribal times, that would be a way a woman could survive it. Okay, it's like a survival adaptation. Well, that's the mechanism by which brainwashing and trauma-based mind control, that's how it works. You fuck the person up, kind of like erasing them through trauma. You give them a new set of rules, and you slowly bring them out of the shell. You use a bunch of guilt against them so they attack themselves. And then you give them a promise of salvation if they join a new cause with you. And then you start affirming them. And then it's like you're dealing with a new person. But history and the studies showed over and over again, it doesn't last that long as soon as you can get that person back out of that situation, like captivity, and get them back into the environment that they came from. It'll reverse itself over time. Weeks or months. Like the guys that got captured and tortured by the North Vietnamese, like the pilots and shit, they would do that. They would denounce the United States and do I like the guy who blinked torture through his his eye, that kind of stuff. Some dudes can resist it longer than others, but
I mean, everybody's different.
Yeah, but if you listen to the audio book Rape of the Mind, it's big, it's long, it's in little sections. You see that basically everyone will break eventually.
Well, yeah.
Everyone will break it. It's just when. And then the methods by which you get a person to break easier. They noticed that in the Soviet Union you had fucking tough-ass Bolshevik revolutionaries. When Stalin's guys started to erase the revolutionaries that brought him into power, they were tough. You couldn't torture them into any confessions. So what you did was they had a law in old Soviet Russia that they could give a death penalty to like a 13-year-old. So they would come in with death warrants for their children under just trumped up crimes. And the dude would fold instantly and just say anything. A lot of guys are willing to die for what they believe in. Almost nobody's willing to let their family die for what they believe in. That's the key. That's how North Korea does what they do. Well, that's why if you want to be a true revolutionary or a true extremist, you can't have any women or children. You got to just be a fucking kamikaze. So that way they can't use that against you.
Yeah, I mean, because they will. And like you said, that's pretty much the most effective way of doing that.
Yep.
But what I was going to say about, what was I talking about? About,
whether or not she was brainwashed.
No, about Stockholm Syndrome. I was watching something with Dr. Grande earlier, who's like he's a psychiatrist, and he's on YouTube, and he does like a lot of funny like videos. They're kind of funny, but you know what I mean, they're serious too. And he did one about Patty Hearst, and he was talking about Stockholm Syndrome, and he said something really interesting that I guess this never really occurred to me, but he's like, Stockholm Syndrome, it's not recognized in the DSM. He's like, technically it's not even really a syndrome, like in the clinical definition of the word. He's like, but the interesting thing about it, and I'm paraphrasing like what he was saying, but he's like, really, Stockholm Syndrome is so common among people that are abducted and things like that it's really not even considered pathological. It's just kind of considered like pretty much a normal reaction to that situation.
That bolsters what I said about it.
Yeah.
Because people, especially women, they have some kind of a packet to where the women that survived capture, even back in pre-human times, were ones that could adapt to the capture. That's what kept them alive. So we inherited those genes. Didn't seem to be a priority with men, because men were just killed. You know? And although I think some men did have things like Stockholm Syndrome, something similar to it when they were captured, but I don't think it was as strong. I mean, some women were known to actually like mate and have children with the captors. You know, there's a lot of that with the serial killers and shit. That girl that they kept in a box for years was in love with the dude that had captured her. Weird shit. The mind. I mean,
your brain does weird shit under those kinds of conditions.
Right. So, just because you think it's wrong doesn't mean it's true. It isn't true. It is true. The human mind is very malleable. It just tries to survive. It'll survive any way it can. And if mating with the attacker is your only way of surviving, they'll do it. You know, it's not conscious. It's just instinctive, I guess. But that was how our ancestors survived. A brutal fucking climb through fucking evolution, you know.
And some people are talking about the movies, too. And I wanted to get a little bit into, because I don't know if you guys know, because I'm a big John Waters fan. And John Waters has actually put the real Patricia Hearst in 5 of his movies. She was in Serial Mom. She was in Cecil B. Demented, which is actually a great movie and actually very loosely based on the Patty Hearst kidnapping case. It's a little bit, but it's a comedy, obviously. But yeah, Dirty Shame, she was in that one as well. But yeah, she was in a bunch of his movies, so I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, I guess they were friends or whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. I guess there have been like other maybe serious movies made about this, but I've only seen the John Waters ones, I hate to say. But like I said, there is like a good documentary that I watched earlier today that's called Gorilla that's, you know, nonfiction that's about this case. So before we get too much into this, Ben Frail is here, and I just got a package yesterday in the mail all the way from Australia. And he has sent me this book here, which looks awesome. So this is like a true crime book called The Stockos.
Yeah, thanks for sending that, man. Shipping from Australia is a fucking arm and a leg.
Right? And I'm just like, damn, it's like, that's really awesome. And you're right, I had never heard of this case. And I try to keep up on, because I wrote about like a bunch of Australian cases and stuff like that, like in my book. But I had actually never heard about this one. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. And maybe we'll do a show about it one of these days, like after I finish reading it. Shouldn't take me too long. I read pretty fast. But yeah, thank you very much for sending that. Like I said, I know it's very expensive to like ship stuff. I mean, I don't know. It's expensive to ship stuff to Australia. That's for sure. I'm not really sure how expensive it is to ship from there. But yeah. Although the weird thing about it is that sometimes, like when I would go and ship stuff to like the UK and Australia, sometimes they'd be almost the same price, which is weird because you'd think it's like so much farther. But I don't know. I don't know how they work it out. Yeah, Mr. 88 said Stockholm Syndrome is just a specific survival adaptation. Yeah, I liked the way that Dr. Grande put it. Like I said, I don't remember the exact words he used, so I'm like paraphrasing. But he's basically saying it's not a mental disorder. It's just like what most people would do in that situation to keep their ass alive. You know what I mean? So it's not pathological, like I said, which is why it's not a form of insanity. Which is why it's not considered a mental disorder. Yeah. But the thing about it was that when Patricia Hearst was put on trial for the crimes, which we'll get into shortly, they did actually try to argue that she was brainwashed or something like that, and that was really, they didn't understand it as well in the 1970s as they maybe, I don't think they understand it like super well now, but for real not then, and nobody had ever used that as a defense before.
Brainwashing?
Right.
Yeah.
Because
it wouldn't have been real, the United States wouldn't have been real familiar with it.
That's what I'm saying. It wasn't really understood. And they said basically the legal precedent for being coerced into something was you basically had to feel that your life was in danger right now. Somebody was holding a gun to your head making you rob the store or whatever. They didn't really have any parameters for talking about somebody that maybe had been kept prisoner and, like I said, kind of slowly brainwashed and is maybe looking like they're doing this of their own volition. Yeah. Because that's what it looked like when the tapes came out, which we'll talk about in a minute. Yeah. But,
It's just funny that if you read that book or listen to that book, Rape of the Mind, you'll see that brainwashing is a European thing. All right, the Chinese picked it up from the Russian communists, but it's a European tactic, and it's a form of government in a certain way. Totalitarian governments always use brainwashing. You start with brainwashing through the mass media to force consensus, to force people to see the world situation through a certain lens, and then you only use information warfare to make them believe things that aren't true. The Nazi Empire did it, so did the Soviet Union, and the United States does it. It's just different the way it looks. They do it through Hollywood, which is subcontracted out by the federal government, basically. There's all kinds of government shit in there, and it's been that way since World War II. All right, nothing new. All right, Whip.
So, huh?
No, I'm just trying to give a little bit of background. Brainwashing is a reality. Very much so.
Yeah, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying that we don't really know what the specific case was going on with, which, like I said, I don't really have a dog in this fight. I don't know the woman. It's like, I don't really, like I said, I kind of read like some sources on either side of the thing. Like I listened to like the FBI guys that were like hunting her. I listened to surviving members of the SLA that were interviewed like in some documentaries and stuff and like their take on it. And so, so I'm not really sure where I come down on it. Like I don't know. It could be like a lot more complicated than I'm giving it credit for. I don't think that I would go so far as to say like she joined voluntarily, because me and Tom were talking like right before the stream started that Tom was like, well, do you think that maybe she could have known them ahead of time and just like the kidnapping was staged? And I was like, I'm not really sure I'd go that far. I did see a couple of sources that speculated that maybe she had known those guys previous to the abduction, but I don't know if that's the case.
How'd they know where she was?
They knew where she was because one of the members worked at the bookstore at Berkeley where she was going to school, and they found her, and everybody knew that she was going there because she was a Hearst and she was kind of famous. So they found her address in the registrars, the records. That's everybody knew that she went there.
Okay, so that's plausible.
You know,
because it's very unlikely that a group would abduct such a high-profile person. That's a ballsy move. Because you know that if you were in charge of that group, that the whole world is going to come after you.
Well, that's what they wanted, which we'll get into in a bit. But like they had motives for kidnapping her, not her specifically, but somebody of her stature. And she was just the one that they knew was available to them. You know what I mean? Because they knew where she was. And
she was female, which is easier. You can rough her up, throw her around, and intimidate her.
Yeah, and she was just I mean, she's just really a kid. She was 19 years old when she got abducted. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? I'm sure
she's going to do whatever you say once you get her.
Pretty much. Yeah. Murder Hornet said they went out in a blaze of glory, literally. They did, which we'll get into in a bit. And like I said, this group, it's funny because I feel like it's kind of weird to say this, but, you know, obviously it's super shitty what they did. It's terrible. But in a way, it kind of got them what they wanted, because this is a tiny, tiny group. It was like 12 people max. Like, that's all it was. And everybody still remembers them nowadays when, like, a lot of other groups from that era have probably been forgotten. And the reason that they remember them is because of this shit that they pulled.
Yeah.
You know
Which
what
is
I mean?
a waste of time, really. Those old
well,
groups,
they didn't get anything they wanted, really.
Yeah. The era of direct action was over by that time. I understand. Back in those days, they didn't have a social media. They didn't have any way to get messages out. So you had to do something high profile to get your message out. Yeah. And they thought that if the message was out, that they would like spark a big revolution. And
they were trying to.
That's very much wishful thinking. I mean, that's projection.
I mean, they were very young.
Right.
I mean, they were only in their 20s. They were very idealistic. And took things way, way, way too far.
A lot of that stuff came from like Marxist writings that were from Europe in the fucking 20s and 30s and 40s. Yeah, you could overthrow a country in Europe back in those days by using shit like that. Those countries were fucking tiny. They were the size of fucking couple big counties here in the United States. But the size of the United States divided by states, each state in a union. No, you're never going to have a fucking nationwide rebellion or revolution. The numbers aren't there either. Of who they wanted to rise up there, the numbers just aren't there, and then you can say, well, it didn't take very many Bolsheviks to overthrow the Soviet Union. Yeah, it didn't take very many Bolsheviks to overthrow the Soviet Union because all the rail lines went through Moscow. If you had control over that central train station there, you could control the entire country because you could choke off supplies or send fucking troops or stop troops from coming because you controlled the central train depot. Well, that never happened in America, man. It's fucking vast road systems and no. You can't.
Well, especially
you can't
like
take anything to control anything here. It's like grabbing air or water. It's just
it's just
anything.
Everything's just too like diffused.
It's diffused.
Everything is.
These kind of things will never work. That's why they use information warfare. You just fuck with your information flow over the internet. If you can have good traction in the internet, you can get anything you want. These guys would have done a lot better in the internet age.
Yeah, but they didn't have that back then. Yeah. You kind of had to do stupid shit like this.
You had to do stupid shit called attention yourself.
Right.
Then you get killed, and then you're silenced after you're dead. Better if you just have a YouTube channel. Yeah. You can talk for fucking years.
Because, spoiler alert, half of them did get killed.
Yeah.
And the other half pretty much went to prison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like I said, there was really only like 11, 12 of them.
Yeah.
Like, that was all there was. Ben says, and I've heard this as well. I don't know if this is the case, but I have heard this theory also, that Donald DeFreeze, who we're going to get into in a minute, who was a member, some say the leader, although some of the other members that they had interviewed were like, we didn't really have a leader per se, but you know what I mean. Donald DeFreeze was an FBI informant the whole time. SLA, part of COINTELPRO to discredit the left, maybe so. I have heard that he was an FBI informant, but I don't know if that's the case. But yeah, I didn't go too much of it. I did kind of go into like the background of the SLA and Donald DeFreeze and stuff like that. I was mostly like concentrating on Patty Hearst and the kidnapping of that, but I did kind of like go into the background of that as well.
Yeah, COINTELPRO, they were doing shit like framing fucking innocent Black Panthers and sending them to fucking prison.
Yeah,
and because
So that's what I mean.
The SLA was not the fucking Black Panthers. The Black Panthers were
the
a
Black
lot better
Panthers.
group.
The Black Panthers actually came out like against, and we'll talk about why that was because it's some fucked up shit that the SLA did prior to the kidnapping. That the Black Panther and actually all the other leftist groups that were around at the time were like, no,
the original,
we're not with them.
the original Black Panthers were a good outfit. You know, they were just kind of right, they were constitutional. That was kind of like a fucking civilian militia, which that's right there in the Constitution. That it was a self-defense group, you know, and they were fighting for their own rights. Don't mistake them for the new Black Panther Party, though. That's kind of like a cheap knockoff. You know what I mean? Not the same. Racist, if you ask me. Black Panthers weren't racist. They were just trying to get along, trying to get their rights.
Because
that's all, you know.
Right, and like I said, they had a legit beef.
Right? Yeah,
they did. And well, like I said, some of the shit that the SLA said, even though they didn't really have, I don't know if I would call the SLA, they didn't really have like a real, I don't know, like a real cohesive ideology, I would say. They were obviously like very anti-corporate, very anti-capitalism. I've seen some people call them anarchists. I don't know if I would say that or not. But they were very much like for the rights of the oppressed and everything like that. But the way they went about it was like stupid as fuck. Yeah,
there's an old Black Panther I'll listen to on YouTube, and he'll end up on some of the shows listen to as a guest. I think his name is Larry Pickney. I think his name was, and COINTELPRO sent him to prison. You listen to him. I think it's Pickney. I think you guys can correct me in the comment section. That dude's on point, man. He knows exactly how this fucking system works and the corruption. And, you know, special interest groups that corporations own everything and make everything happen. They have nothing. This government's got nothing to do with us and fucking helping us.
And I mean, that's what I mean. So it's like some of the shit that the SLA said, even though some of it was like obviously like ridiculous, but some of the shit they said, I'm like, yeah, okay. Like like most people would agree with that probably, but that's the thing. Just because you agree with a couple of things they said, that doesn't mean that you endorse their methods, which were fucked up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Abducting and raping people and shit, fucking, you know.
Well, and murdering
people. Yeah.
So there was that too, which I think maybe a lot of people don't know. Like one of the things happened, like I said, that's why they had a beef with the Black Panther Party.
It's just, you know, just kind of dumb thinking they want to solve a problem with hands-on means. And the problem could not be solved with hands-on means. It's got to be done through information warfare. They should have just pulled their money together and bought a radio station. That would have done a lot more damage. sit there and just
probably like I said, information is a lot more powerful if you honestly any kind of group, and even if you have, like I said, even if your goals are something like good, if you have like good intentions, it's never ever, it's always going to blow up in your face if you try to start doing, I'm not saying like anything illegal because I'm not talking, but anytime you like hurt anybody or hurt innocent people, you're bombing shit, you're doing that, that's always going to blow up in your face.
Unless that's what you want, unless you want something to blow up. Like, you can spark civil wars if you want that.
Right, but
usually the person that's sparking the civil wars in neither side, they're trying to get two enemy sides to fight each other. And then once the winner arises, he'll be weakened and you can go after that one. So usually you start a civil war to weaken two enemies. That's usually how you do it. Yeah.
I'm just saying that if you have goals along the lines that the SLA did, which some of which were noble goals, this is not the way to go about it. Pro tip. Because it didn't accomplish anything and a bunch of innocent people got killed. So, there was that. Xanada said, I watched a 3-hour documentary on these guys, did a lot of research on them. Very unorganized group in my opinion. Yeah, they really didn't have their shit together, to be honest with you. Kind of aimless in their goals, but very interesting topic. Yeah, I found it very interesting as well. But yeah, they were just kind of, like I said, they weren't this big, like, organized terrorist cell or anything like that. It was just like a bunch of super idealistic college students, pretty much, or not all of them were college students. Some of them were had been prisoners that escaped and shit like that. But like I said, and some of their goals were quite noble actually, but they just went way too fucking far, and just the shit got ridiculous, and people ended up dead.
Mr. 88 agreed with me right there. But
Mr. 88, ironic, the newspaper radio station would have been the SLA's best play. William Randolph Hearst exploited that route better than anyone. That's true.
The highest form of warfare is 5th generation warfare, which involves information warfare. All right, that's one facet of it. Owning media, or at least having, because you have to get a message out. And if the message is true, it goes viral. It goes viral because people in their heart know what's true just by that's right, that's the situation I'm seeing, and if it was true, if what the SLA believed in was true, if they were able to get that message out through the airwaves, they would have got a lot more traction than going out and fucking using violence.
Well, they would have got a lot more sympathy. Like I said, that's the thing.
Money and power.
Especially, a group like the SLA, which, like I said, on its face had, what could be considered noble goals toward helping the oppressed and things like that. It's a lot of people would be on board with that, if you didn't go around killing random people and blowing shit up and building bombs and stuff like that. You would get a lot more sympathy to your cause. I'm just saying, it just doesn't, it's just never the right way to go. I'm just, other than it being morally reprehensible, it's also not effective. So, you know what I mean? Like I said, unless Tom is saying, unless that's what you want, but that was, I don't think that's what they wanted. And actually some of the SLA members later on that, didn't participate in the abduction because they were in jail for other things and shit like that, they were people are turning up dead, and it's that wasn't really what we wanted. That wasn't what we intended. But it just kind of went that way, you know what I mean? So yeah, somebody was saying the 60s and 70s were fucked up decade. Yeah, that's why I just kind of don't get all that upset about shit that's going on now, because I'm just I was a little kid during the 70s, but I remember some shit was fucked up. Okay, that was just kind of all of the fucking riots, all of the fucking, there was Watergate, Vietnam, there was just fucking protests all the time. There was fucking, people forget, but it's in the 70s, fucking planes were being hijacked by terrorists all the time. Yeah. There was fucking bombs. I think between 1972 and 1973 was 4,000 bombs. Yeah. Planted around the United States. It was just it was fucking crazy.
The crime was real bad too.
The crime was horrible.
It was much worse than it is now, I believe.
Way worse.
People. Yeah, it was fucked up back then.
It was.
But the thing is that what they were doing was dumb shit that really didn't make a big difference. It just caused fucking chaos. What's happening now is a lot smarter and a lot more dangerous. You know what I mean? Real high levels of information warfare. You got people trying to start World War III with fucking Russia. They're trying to bring nuclear weapons. You just got a lot of dumb shit happening at very high levels. That it's not as violent as it was, but it's a lot more
insidious.
Yeah. They're trying to get they're trying to control your opinions by controlling what kind of information you get, and then there's a lot of gaslighting, and really you follow the money. It's going up into corporations that are doing it. They're doing it for fucking reasons because they're kind of like merged in with what Ian Fleming called Spectre, which is fucking gangs of evil oligarchs, you know, and who've taken over things like the UN and all these fucking international organizations. It's just corruption has a lot to do with it. People trying to be more important than they really are. But it's all a very dangerous situation. I think this is the end of an era. Something new is going to come. This can't go on for long. Kind of like the end of the Roman Empire. And what's funny is that the Roman Empire ended, but that really wasn't the end because new nations were born out of it. You know, the medieval period and the Visigothic empires and shit. And a lot of good stuff came out of that. People realized that technology continued to increase and certain things got better.
We've talked about that before. If you were living back then on the ground, it wouldn't have seemed like because a lifetime is so short. Yeah. We only see it in hindsight. You only see it in retrospect because you can see the long span of history and you can see what happened subsequently, like what the fallout was, like what the repercussions were. Like at the time you were living through it, it probably wouldn't have seemed like anything. You know what I mean?
It'd have been kind of like normal. After Rome fell apart, there were people in places that were no longer Rome because they were considering themselves Roman. Like the Visigoths considered themselves to be Roman, from what I remember. I think they had some of the symbols of Rome still because they thought they were upholding Roman values. Rome was long gone, you know. It was like Charlemagne was thinking that too, but Rome was long gone.
Mr. 88 said the 70s were so violent because people were pissed they had to wear those awful clothes. I don't doubt it. I'm sure that was a factor. Murder Hornet said the Weather Underground planted a lot of bombs but didn't want to kill people. They would warn them before until one day they blew themselves up making a bomb. LOL. Yes, they did. And also suggested that we do a show on the Weather Underground. We probably should one of these days. We didn't do a show on the Weather Underground?
Nah.
I thought we did, but okay, maybe not.
70s were dumb because of all that leaded gasoline.
Well, we've talked about that. We've talked about maybe that's why there was so much crime and serial killers and shit like that. I'm sure that's a factor. Like I said, I'm
lead
sure.
Poisoning.
I'm sure that's it. I'm sure.
Make you violent and dumb.
Yeah. It was a crazy time. So like I said, it's, you know, I think people like piss and moan about shit nowadays, but people always piss and moan about it. Oh, I live in the worst of times. And it's like, man, it wasn't, like now isn't even, it's not anything like the 70s was. The 70s was way worse. I feel like late 60s to through the 70s, I feel like it was a lot more violent. You don't see the same kind of shit.
They had some good food in the 70s, though, man. Pizza was fucking great in the 70s. Man,
I don't know. They had a lot of shitty food, too.
Round table pizza in fucking California, like
I will argue that
82.
I would argue that the 70s were probably the best decade for filmmaking, and possibly music, at least the late 70s. But as far as culture goes,
You could get a beautiful steak in the 70s. Fucking right.
You probably still can nowadays if you pay for it.
It's just the money, yeah.
Sure.
I feel like I'm living in Soylent Green now. Remember Burgess Meredith? Remember that? Strawberries. Strawberry.
What are you talking about? We eat good food all the time.
I know that. I'm just saying.
Man. Tom's been making salads with all stuff we grew out in the backyard.
And we need to get a steak, though, man.
I haven't had a steak in a long time.
I
want a nice fucking blue steak. I want a fucking rare ass motherfucker.
I can do it.
I haven't seen that in a long time.
I'm getting ready to fucking lay out $60-$70 in a steak. How about that? Like big old fucking steaks. Cook it on a grill out there.
Yeah,
I rebuilt the grill.
Yeah,
new gas burners,
new
new
grills.
grills. I rebuilt it. Rebuilt the grill.
Every now and then, I haven't had a steak in a long time. Every now and then I want to, but if I have a steak, I want it fucking rare, man, and I'm not kidding.
Okay.
Because sometimes I go to like a steak restaurant and I'm just like, I want it rare, and then it's like, medium rare. I'm like,
Okay.
I want it fucking bloody. You know what I'm saying? I like it like that. I kind of like burgers like that too. I know a lot of people are grossed out by that, but you know, what are you gonna do? The heart wants what it wants, as does the stomach. So another thing in the 70s too was like that fucking oil crisis. Remember, like all those fucking people, you'd see those huge lines of people like trying to get gas, and like the gas would run out and there'd be signs all over the gas stations, no gas today, and all that other kind of shit. It was a shit show, pretty much. It was a shit show.
See, Mr. 88 recognizes, he's sitting right there. Recognized town. Round Table Pizza in Canyon County, California was my favorite place to eat when I was in elementary school. That's right, man. Round Table was the shit. And they'd have missile command. They'd have Missile Command in there, and they'd have Battle Zone and Centipede. Yeah,
Centipede was one of my favorite video games back in the day.
I
used to be pretty good at it.
Missile Command with the big ball and Battle Zone, where they were fucking with the tank game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were talking about the Weather Underground, how they... It's like, I think they killed a few cleaners or night watchmen, but they didn't try to have casualties. It was more about property damage and spreading terror. Yeah, I mean, they did... I mean, that's still shitty. It's like, you know, because even if you accidentally kill a person, that person's still dead. You know what I mean? But, I mean, I guess it does mean something that they didn't really intend to kill anybody. But yeah, so what I was saying, like, so into this kind of whole 1970s, which was this shit show, like I said. So there was a lot of this kind of shit going on. So this is what happens. This happened in February of 1974. This is actually the first time that somebody as famous, as high profile as Patricia Hearst was actually, like, abducted. Now, if you don't know who Patricia Hearst is, I'm sure most people do know, but she's actually the granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst, the publishing magnate, who, fun fact, was the inspiration for Orson Welles' classic Citizen Kane. That's who that was about. So, Patricia Hearst came from, like, a very, very wealthy family. Maybe not, I mean, really, I mean, they're rich as shit, okay? So I'm not saying this to, like, kind of mitigate that in any way. But maybe not as rich as you might be thinking, because I guess William Randolph Hearst, he had 5 kids, and he gave each of them, like, a big chunk of the fortune, but then, like, most of the fortune he had, like, tied up in this trust or his company or something like that. So they were super wealthy and super influential, but maybe didn't have, like, you know, quite as much money falling out of their asshole as you think. But I'm just saying, obviously, like, super, super wealthy, super privileged. So there was that. So in 1974, Patricia Hearst was 19 years old, and she was going to... University of California, Berkeley. She was, you know, she was a sophomore, I believe, and she was studying art history. Now, what happened with this whole thing was that, as I mentioned earlier, the reason that the SLA targeted her specifically, like I said, they were just looking for somebody that was kind of like high profile, that would kind of like represent you know, the capitalist class that they were trying to, you know, they were trying to highlight. And so it just so happened that I believe one of the members of the SLA either worked at the bookstore at Berkeley or knew somebody that worked there. And they said it was kind of open, you know, it was, everybody knew that Patty Hearst was going to Berkeley. And so they said it was pretty easy to, like, find out where she lived. Now, as I said, I have seen some sources that said that that Patty Hearst knew a couple members of the SLA prior to her abduction, but I don't know if that's the case. I have heard from one particular source that I read that said that she had actually visited Donald DeFreeze, who, you know, later would go on to be the quote-unquote, like, ersatz leader of it, that she had visited him in prison, like, prior to his escape. Again, I don't know if that's the case or not, or
prior to
whatever.
His escape after her abduction by him.
No. Okay. He escaped prior to the abduction.
Okay.
But I'm just saying that there had been some speculation, at least that I read, that she had met him prior to his escape from prison.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Right.
Like, I really only found, like, one source that said that, so I don't really know if that's true.
Sounds flimsy.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm just mentioning it.
Yeah.
I'm just not saying it's true or not, but I'm just saying, yeah. So, okay. So this group, the SLA, they decide, well, Patty Hearst, she's like a perfect target, right? She's she's from a very wealthy family. She's from a very prominent family. And they figured that what they were initially planning to do was that they were going to kidnap her, and they were going to use her as a prisoner exchange, because 2 of their members had been put in jail for a murder, which I'll talk about in a little while. So they were going to they're like, hey, you know, if you let those 2 guys out, we'll give you your daughter back. That was their initial plan. That's not really how it worked out, but that's what they were planning on doing. So let's talk a little bit about this group, though. So we've talked a little bit about them before. SLA, the Symbionese Liberation Army. Symbionese doesn't really... I mean, it's not a real word. They just, like, made it up. And I guess what they were getting at was it was kind of a play on symbiosis. They were trying to maybe kind of get together all these disparate sort of groups that had similar goals and kind of, like, get them all under one umbrella, I guess, is what they were shooting for. But, you know, spoiler alert, that's not really how it worked. So, yeah, like I said, there was just like 11, 12 people pretty much. Now, they were actually founded in 1973 by the aforementioned Donald DeFreeze. Now, he took the name. A bunch of them changed their names, you know, when they joined the group, which, very culty. Always watch if somebody's asking you to do that shit. But, yeah, so Donald DeFreeze, you know, founded the group in 1973. And his name was General Field Marshal Cinque, I think is what they call him, Cinque or something like that. So basically, they were kind of like, it started out as, like I said, they started out with this sort of noble goal of their whole thing was that they saw black prisoners as essentially like prisoners of war, because like the government was imprisoning them for bullshit charges, or like, you know, if they were innocent and things like that, which, like I said, there is a little bit of truth in that, particularly in the 1970s. But, you know, I think they got to a point where they're just saying, like, well, all black people in prison are all prisoners of war. Like, they're all, you know what I mean?
It actually got worse with what they called the multi-bill, or the 3 strikes you're out bill.
Yeah.
Where if you just had 3 convictions, you get life, no matter how small those convictions were.
Yeah, that could be, that was
that
like,
didn't make any fucking sense.
That's a stupid
And
fucking
guess who is the big supporter of that one? Fucking Joe Biden. All right, go figure. But you can go back and look at it. He was one of the main ones behind that.
That was kind of made me mad, because, like I said, I'm a Democrat, I'm a liberal, stuff like that. But that was one of the things that pissed me off, is that they were trying to make themselves seem like tough on crime, and I'm like, why the fuck? Like, why would you do like such a stupid law? That is, I'm like, that is gonna blow up in your face.
I'm a political atheist. It's just Coke and Pepsi. It's still just cola. They don't work for us. They work for corporate overlords and oligarchs. They're going to do whatever they want to do. You're just going to vote for one party or the other, and they own them both. There are some people in there that are fucking rocking the boat, but it's all just show. It's show for you because you're plebes, you're plebs, peasants, you know. They're just making you feel like you have some kind of say in this or some kind of choice. It's a fake democracy. It's just window dressing. They own the system. So that's what they wanted. If the Democrats didn't support that, the Republicans would have. Or they just would have done it together. It's the same shit they did on the war against fucking drugs, because there's a lot of money to be made in that. It's money. They're all bribed. Kickbacks. They go into those fucking offices broke. They're in there 30 years and they come out and they're multi-millionaires. And they didn't make that much money. Where'd all that money come from? Yeah, come on. Only a child would believe. But, yeah, multi-bill. That one. So that was a gripe. They got rid of that. They should have never had that.
Mr. 88 said didn't have to be 3 felonies.
Yeah, it had to be. I thought it had to be 3 felonies.
Yeah.
Had to be 3.
Still,
felonies.
though.
But some of those felonies, though, are not. It didn't have to be a violent felony, I don't think.
That's what I mean. There's a felony. I mean, that's there.
There's a lot of stuff here in the U.S. that's a felony, and you're like
kind of a bullshit.
You're like, wait a minute, hold on, what? Yeah.
Like, I might go along with it if it was like 3 like violent crimes.
Yeah.
That might okay, maybe. But it's like, even then, I don't really like those kind of one size fits all kind of solutions for shit, because there's always like mitigating circumstances. You kind of have to take everything like on a case by case basis.
Another thing they did is, like, in the 50s and 60s, they really started to ratchet down on the concept of a felon. If you took a felony, it was on your record forever. You really couldn't rejoin society with full rights. I mean, some of those dudes lost their voting rights, gun rights, whatever. So they made a huge marginalized criminal class of people.
I mean, that seems like really obvious. And
so then they become repeat offenders.
Yeah, because what else are you going to do?
Snowballs. That's totally unconstitutional, totally stupid. If you commit a crime, you go to prison, you pay for it. You lose your rights when you're in prison. When the sentence is served, your rights are restored. You're now a citizen again. You've paid for it. You should have full rights, voting rights, gun rights. You're a human.
Yeah, they should just...
Humans have human rights. That's what a Constitution is.
If they don't think that you should be allowed out, then don't
let you out. If they say, well, he's too dangerous to have the rights of a citizen,
then don't
let him out.
If you let him out and he served his sentence, then he should have... Because you're, like you said, that shit's just blowing up in your face because you're making... an underclass, these people can't get jobs, they can't vote, they can't do this and that, they can't participate in the community anymore, and it's like that's just pushing them back toward the same fucking shit again.
In the traditional...
It's better for society as a whole.
In the traditional American culture, back in the 1800s even, when the shit was going strong, a dude would go to jail or prison, maybe for robbery, and do 5-10 years locked up. Get out. And become a cop. Yeah. And be a good cop. Because he's like, I know how to catch criminals. You pay me, I'll catch criminals. I used to be a criminal. You know, that was very common. A lot of them changed their names. Just became somebody else.
Well, that was easy to do.
So the lawmen of the old America played both sides, but the sheriff knew who his men were. Some of them were straight up. Some of them might be a little... And if you were real kind of sideways, you became a Pinkerton. Which was like it's what the FBI was modeled after.
That was another show that I don't remember if I ever... I don't remember if I ever wrote it down. I think I put it in the poll a couple times, but it didn't win, but I don't remember if I put it in the...
Pinkertons were the original Snake Plisskens. They would hire any talent. They didn't care as long as you could get the job done. They had fucking ex-criminals in there, ex-cops, ex-hookers. Because they used female sex operatives, too. They were fucking very advanced. They wrote the book on it. On Special Operations, the fucking Pinkerton Detective Agency.
Okay, so the SLA initially started out as like this kind of like a convicts' rights group, or like I said, they were kind of like trying to draw attention to the fact that a lot of black men particularly were imprisoned for perhaps bullshit charges, or perhaps if they were innocent or were railroaded in jail or whatever, which like I said does happen, so that wasn't crazy. Now initially, Donald DeFreeze was, in spite of the group's first initial goals, was the only black member. The other 7 members were white, but you know what I mean. But they did all take on Swahili names for whatever reason, and started training with guns and everything like that. And they also had a motto. They had a logo too, which is like a 7-headed cobra type of thing, which you can see on the flag that's behind Patty Hearst and the very famous photo of her in the beret. But they had a motto also, which was "Death to the fascist insect that preys upon the life of the people," and they repeated that like all the time. So now, remember when I said that when they abducted Patty Hearst, their initial plan was they were going to trade her for 2 of their members that had been arrested. The thing that the 2 members had been arrested for was an assassination. So there's that. This actually happened in November of 1973. Now, 2 of the members, or at least, the 2 guys that, I don't know how many of them were involved in planning it, but 2 guys, eventually ended up going to prison for it. But they assassinated this guy named Marcus Foster. Marcus Foster, interestingly, was the first black superintendent of schools in Oakland, California. The reason that Donald DeFreeze targeted him, another black man, which you would think was not really in line with the group's goals, at least, going forward. He thought, and the other people in the group thought, that because he was going to do the plan that he was going to put into action, I don't know if this was the case or not, but they understood it to mean that he was advocating for mandatory ID cards. They did not like that, thinking that was like a fascist rule, so they decided that they were going to kill him over it, which seems a little excessive. So they actually did. They shot him, and they shot another guy too, who was with him, who was wounded. Now, because of this assassination, again, the Black Panther Party were like, bro, we don't want any part of that. and a lot of other leftist groups who maybe would have been sympathetic to their cause. Otherwise, after this happened, we're like, yeah, no, we're not hanging with you guys. So there was that. So 2 of the guys got arrested for this murder. Their names were Russell Little and Joseph Romero. Now, after these 2 went to prison, that was when they started thinking, well, we need to abduct somebody to get these 2 motherfuckers out of jail, even though they killed somebody, so, whatever. So what they decided to do was, because Patty Hearst went to Berkeley and they knew where she lived, and she was very prominent from a very wealthy family, they decided, we're going to abduct her and trade her for them. So in February of 1974, 5 of the members put on masks and essentially broke in her apartment. Now, I've heard, I don't know if they kicked in the door. I think what they did was they had one of the female members go up to the door and say, hey, I need your phone. There's an accident or some shit like that. And then when either Patty or her boyfriend, whose name was Stephen Weed, when one of them went to the door, they kicked it in and they all had guns and they like beat the shit out of her boyfriend and basically picked her up and bodily put a blindfold on her and carried her out and like stuck her in the trunk of their car. Interestingly, her boyfriend, Stephen Weed, this is really weird. I was reading one source that said that he was 51 years old and she was 19. I'm like, that's not the case. I'm pretty sure he was 26. I think people got upset because he was her teacher. Like, I think he taught music or something like that, and she took a class from him. And I think there was, like, some kind of controversy because she was, like, dating a teacher. But I'm like, look, he was legit, like, only 6 or 7 years older than her. So
yeah, that was university.
That's what I mean.
That's what they can do that.
Not really that big a deal.
Yeah.
It's just weird because I was like, I was reading this one breakdown. I'm like, he was not 51. He was 26 years old.
Yeah.
Like, there's even, like, news footage of him from the time where he's talking about the kidnapping. Like, and I'm like, he's obviously just
a young guy.
Yeah. So there was that. But yeah, he got beat up as far as I know. And they basically he said initially that he thought it was a robbery because he said that's what they said when they busted in. Like, he tied them up and he's just like, where's the money? Where's the money? Like, all that kind of stuff. And he's like, and I could hear Patricia like kind of whimpering in the other room and he didn't really know what was going on in there. And then he saw them like carry her out, you know what I mean?
They were tying her up probably.
Yeah. And like I said, she had a blindfold on, and they stuck her. I think they put her in the trunk of the car and like drove off with her. So 3 days after that, the SLA sent a letter to the media and whatnot, and they basically said Patty Hearst is a prisoner of war. And then they had made like an audio tape. That was usually how they communicated. They either sent letters to the media and like, insisted you have to read this or you have to play this like on the air or we're going to kill her or whatever. So they did that. So they sent an audio tape to a radio station and basically said, I guess because they figured out, because remember how I said like at first they were like, oh, well, they kidnapped her so they could trade her for the 2 guys that got arrested for Marcus Foster's murder. But I guess they figured out, well, that shit's probably not going to happen because they're not just going to let 2 fucking murderers walk free, right? So they decided to maybe do something else. Maybe something, I'm assuming that they were trying to get, like, maybe public sympathy. So what they did was they contacted the media and said, we'll let Patricia go if her dad, Randolph Hearst, feeds all the poor people in California or just in that one area. I think it was California, and I'm just like,
how's he gonna do that?
Yeah, well, that's what he said. He's like, now come on, I got a lot of money, but not that much money. You know what I'm saying? Well, there's a lot of fucking poor people. Okay.
What infrastructure do you do that? You just send out a bunch of trucks?
Well, that's
food?
Okay. So what they did, so this is what happened.
Yeah.
So they're basically like, yeah, we have to like, I guess like under a certain threshold, or all the people that were needy or whatever. Now, Randolph Hearst, he's kind of like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that would cost, and I think like since then, like people have done like how much that actually would have cost to do, and it's like it would have been like $400 million or something like that. And what he did was he kind of did like kind of a half measure where he's like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you guys like $2 million, and then they put together. It took them like a week or 10 days or something like that, but they put together this kind of this little group called People in Need. He gave them like $2 or $3 million, and they got a bunch of food and again like put it in trucks and distributed it, and basically and they said
he handed out UNICEF packages.
Pretty much.
Basically talking about, and probably beans and rice, big bags.
Well, we'll get into that in a minute. But it's just like I don't. And by all accounts, it was something of a clusterfuck, which, like I said, they didn't really have the infrastructure for doing something like for distributing anything. They had to like cobble it together really quickly. So there was that. And I did like on the documentary that I watched earlier, they did have some interviews with people that had come down to get food, and there was one woman on there going, I hate to take advantage of like this girl getting kidnapped and everything, but I got to feed my kids. Yeah. So you know what I mean?
Give me a bag of rice.
Right. So it's that kind of thing. So it was kind of a shit show, which, okay. I mean, at least he did kind of make a goodwill gesture, but blah. Now... He's just
trying to meet the demands.
Right. And because he basically said, well, the demands you've given me are, like, impossible.
Yeah.
So, which, fair enough. Like I said, he's got money, but I guess he doesn't have that much money. And you can't, like, always access it, I suppose. So, what happened after that, though? Because the food distribution was such a clusterfuck, and because Randolph Hearst came out in the media later and said, I tried to do what they wanted, but what they're asking me is impossible, so, it's out of my hands is the wording that he used. Like, it's now out of my hands. I'm assuming he meant, like, the fate of his daughter was now out of his hands. Because he said that, at this point, it seems that Patty maybe turned a corner a little bit. I'm not really sure if... Like I said, I'm not really sure what was going on behind closed doors, like, while she was with this group, because she was with them, like I said, for a long time. And so it could have been that when her dad came out and said, yeah, we tried to do this, but we fucked it up, and it's out of my hands now, they might have spun that to her as, your dad doesn't give a shit about you, like, he didn't do this. Like, I don't know, I'm just speculating. So that might have kind of, like, pushed her more in the direction of maybe, like, sympathizing with them, or... something of that nature. I'm not really sure. But basically, she comes out later on, and there's audio tapes. You can hear them. They're all over YouTube and everything of her talking, like all the communiques that they sent. And she was basically, at this point, like, because prior to this, she had sent, audio tapes of her being like, I'm okay, I don't want you guys to worry, and all this other kind of stuff. But then this one was like, I can't remember exactly, like, the wording that she used, but she said, oh, well, you said something like, oh, it's out of your hands. You might as well have said, I wash my hands of it. And she sounded like she was getting, like, pissed about it. You know what I mean? And she also said, oh, the food you distributed was, subpar, basically. It's like it wasn't anything like our family would eat. Like, just accusing them of cheaping out. Like, that kind of stuff.
They're trying to feed as many people as possible.
Right. So she was mad about that.
They were guilt tripping her.
I kind of feel like maybe that's what was going on.
Yeah, that's the technique. They're like, oh, you see, we asked her to feed us, and what do you eat at your house? Oh, you eat filet mignon and this, that. Nah, he dropped off rice and fucking beans.
Spam.
Hot dogs and cans of Spam. Okay. That's peasant food. He didn't hand out filet mignon and everything. So they're guilt tripping her. Which is that's how it's done, like I told you in that book, Rape of the Mind. So they're turning her against her family.
Yeah, and you'll see that, like, as the time goes on. Like I said, if you listen to the audio tapes that they sent to the media with her talking on them, over the months, she starts getting more and more, she starts calling her parents, like, pigs and fascists and stuff like that, and shitting on them and whatnot. When before, like I said, all she was saying was, I'm okay, I don't want you guys to worry about me, they're not hurting me, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? But she just got more and more militant, I guess, like, as time went on.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Probably. Oh yeah, they just stumbled on the techniques of brainwashing. Maybe they read up on it.
That's the thing. It's like sometimes I don't know if it's that calculated. It's like sometimes you just kind of like do stuff that works, and you just kind of unconsciously go along with it.
Yeah, they were just following their instincts on how to get somebody to turn against their families, and it just ended up to be that way. And then the incarceration, what they were doing to her, which you haven't gotten into that yet. They're keeping her in a closet part of the time.
Well, because I didn't get into that yet because that was something that she just came out with later.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure if it was going on at the time and she just didn't talk about it, or because it really didn't come out until her trial.
Right.
Like how they were supposedly treating her.
Yeah. So we don't know if it's true, but possibly, probably.
I mean, maybe. Probably. Like I said, I'm not denying it.
If she was abducted, they probably kept her in the closet.
Yeah.
At least for a while, until they had a cell they could put
I think they kept her in there for a while, and then, like, they let her out, and then I guess they were trying to, like, you know what I mean? She also said she was raped multiple times, but, you know, I don't know if that's true or not either, but she did say that later on, like, at the trial. Which is possible.
Well, they might have just had sex with her. And then later on, she's like, well, you know, it was rape. Because she probably felt she didn't have a choice.
Maybe. Yeah, Xanada said, the documentary I saw said that she had a love affair with one of these guys. That's the thing. It's like See, that's the thing about this case. And like I said, I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not coming down on one side or another. Like I said, I don't want to be in a case of being like people saying they got raped and me saying, oh, no, you didn't. Because I don't fucking know. I wasn't there. But it's like, I have heard that maybe she did actually like fall in love with one of those guys and like have a romance with them.
Yeah, but that might have happened after the abduction.
Right. Well, yeah, it did. It did.
Yeah, okay, well, then that goes into,
so I'm not really sure if that's
that
like...
falls into Stockholm syndrome and the things that happen during brainwashing. Like I said, she called it rape. And at the time, it could have been that the dudes that were doing it didn't really even realize that that's what it was.
Right.
They might have just made a hit on her, and she responds, okay.
Right.
Because they're very compliant. They don't want to get in trouble.
Well, yeah, because so maybe you don't know what they're going to do if you say no, if you refuse them.
So to avoid getting beaten, they'll just go, okay. And
they'll just go along with it.
And the dude's like, oh, okay.
Which, like I said, is still rape, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, yeah, it is, but she probably should have said, okay, I'll do it. I don't want to, but I'll do it. That would make it rape.
Yeah.
That dude might have thought, some of those dudes might have thought it was consensual.
Yeah.
Some dudes are just don't understand body language. They don't know how
obviously.
women operate. They don't really, they can't put themselves in that girl's shoes, you know what I mean? So, you know, these are young guys and not the brightest bunch. So there is a chance that those dudes didn't think it was rape. They're, oh, she loves us, you know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they were deluded too. Maybe
deluded, right? Yeah,
they're like, oh, she's all into it.
We're heroes. Yeah, we're heroes of the fucking saving the people. She's on our side now. She's having sex with us all. So you don't know. You had to be there.
That's what. Yeah.
To see the tone of it. Now if they're smacking her around and shit, then you know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's bad. But yeah, that's like other things like that are more insidious. That's like a more insidious manner of control because it's not overt. Like you said, they're not punching her in the face. Yeah. They're not doing anything like that, but it's like
could have been just that pressure of these
that's
dudes.
Just that implied threat was there.
She feels that she has to say yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. That's why this shit's so complicated, you know what I mean? Because you don't really know what was going on at the time. Mr. 88 said if she was in captivity, it was rape. Yeah, that's the thing. It's not like I mean, they took her from our apartment. So. I don't really think... Yes, I have seen like one or two things say it's like, oh, maybe the abduction was staged. But honestly, 99.9% of the sources I saw, like, nobody really disputes that she actually was taken bodily from her apartment.
Yeah, if she's a captive, then it was rape.
Whether she said yes or not.
But then you have to understand how delusional these dudes are.
Yeah,
I'd punish them either way. I'd punish them. Yeah. Either way.
Well, they all got punished.
They abducted her. But the chances are those dudes thought that they swung her. Oh, she's now on our side.
Some of the members that survived, like they went in prison and they're out now and stuff like that, and they were talking about it, and they were saying that, some of them absolutely did think that it was so cool that it's like we got this rich girl and she like completely flipped
and joined us
so it's like without really considering that maybe it wasn't entirely her choice
without considering the pressure she was under, because they can't put themselves in her shoes. A lot of people are solipsistic. They only see things from their point of view, and they were like, oh, we're good guys, and now she knows it. That's
probably exactly
now she knows we're the good guys. Now that's probably the thing.
Yeah, she's woken up.
Yeah, she's woke now. Yeah. So that's probably what happened.
Yeah, that sounds that actually does sound legit.
I was a soldier. The army you join is the right army. No matter what uniform it is, from your point of view, it's the right army. So these guys think they're in the right army, that they're the good guys. They don't see themselves as the bad guys. They think they're the good guys.
Well, that's kind of the scary thing about bad guys is that they always think they're the good guys.
Yeah.
That's what makes them scary.
Yes, shock people. The Nazis thought they were the good guys.
There's a hilarious fucking...
Shot they were the good guys.
Who the fuck was that? Who's that British comedy sketch? They did that whole...
Yeah, we're the baddies?
Are we the baddies?
Yeah. They were the good guys destroying evil and protecting their own people.
That will never not make me laugh.
And
That's
saving Europe from evil. By making it all Germany. Just everything's narrative. And they believed it. Because they saw themselves as the good guys.
Yeah. Well, they kind of saw themselves, and a couple of the surviving members said this too, they kind of saw themselves initially, at least, before shit started going sideways. They initially kind of saw themselves as like Robin Hood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which, like I said,
Yeah, I'm telling you. Yeah, that was rape. Legally, that's rape.
Well, yeah, and Mr. 88 said, yes, Jen, even if she consented, it would still be rape if she was captive, yeah.
Because she's not in the right frame of mind. She's not in a normal...
Yeah, and like I said...
She's been kidnapped.
Yeah, she didn't choose to be taken from her
In most southern
apartment.
states, if you kidnap somebody, that's a life sentence.
Yeah.
So anything that happens there is Stockholm syndrome. She can't consent. She's not free to consent, really.
Yeah.
She can't walk away. So yeah. It's the same thing that happens with serial killers' girlfriends, a lot of them.
Yeah.
They can't walk away from the dude. They'll even help him kill other women.
Yeah.
So it's just Stockholm syndrome.
And we talked about that too, like when we talked about like serial killer couples and things like that, because I always find that an interesting dynamic too, because 99 times out of 100, I feel like most of the time the women in that equation would not kill anybody if they hadn't met that dude.
Here's another thing when you say, oh, you can't put all this on guys. There's this professional escort that I listen to on YouTube. Her name is Ayla. I've mentioned her a couple times. Her and 2 or 3 other girls were streamers. They were streaming live over StreamMate. They had a girl with them who was like one of the wildest ones, doing all this shit on stream and all this lesbian type stuff. She eventually left and went back to her parents and then totally flipped, and she thought that those other girls had made her do it and that they had brainwashed her into it. All right? And some people's minds can rewrite history. She didn't charge them, but that's what she told her family.
Was she just doing that to save her own ass?
No, but it could. They were living together in one apartment. So it may have been, from her point of view, the peer pressure. She felt she couldn't say no to the streaming.
I can see that.
That it was like letting down the other girls. They wouldn't be able to make the bills, and that, oh, well, if I don't do this with this girl on film, she won't make this money and she'll use it against me. I have to pretend like I want to do this. So there's that aspect too. It can happen between girls.
Yeah.
In sexual situations, streaming in the sex industry.
Yeah, I mean, nobody got murdered.
Nobody got murdered. I'm just saying, the human mind is weird.
It is.
And Ayla was like, wait a minute, hold on. How could that be? Because you came up with this idea and you did this and you were into that. What the hell are you talking about? But in retrospect, in order to absolve herself to her family and her own conscience, because she went Christian and all that, I think.
Oh, well, that
was one of those. She rewrote that history.
Right.
As that she was forced into all that. But she didn't go to the cops over it. She signed all those consent forms, passed all that shit, because you got to go through a process to become a streamer.
Yeah, you can't just... Yeah, we're going through all of that right now.
Yeah.
You can't
Our
just...
OnlyFans is opening in a couple days.
You can't just, like, put naked shit up on the internet and, like, you got to sign consent forms, you got to take a picture of yourself next to your driver's license to make sure everybody is of age.
Each video and
nobody's going to get in trouble.
Each video and each photograph you post, it all has to... There's consent forms, and you have to proper ID on each one of those before it goes. It's legal. You're making legal porn.
Yeah.
It's not just, hey, put those up there.
Yeah, you can't do that. I mean, well, you can, but
but you can get in trouble.
You'll get in trouble. Mr. 88 said Simon Whistler, who I love Simon Whistler, by the way. He's got like a bajillion channels, but he's fucking awesome. I love him. He released an episode about Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka. Yeah, we did a video about them. today. Ooh, shit, I'm gonna have to go watch that. Maybe I can watch it tomorrow on my lunch hour. She was the worst of the two. I've heard that, yeah, about those two. And actually actively raped girls that they kidnapped, even when Paul was not present. Yeah, I think that situation, because I think we talked about them on...
Is that the guy with the van?
No, these were, I think they were Canadian. They were the Barbie and Ken killers.
Oh, those two, yeah.
Like, they're all like,
yeah.
They're all, like, super good looking and everything. Yeah. I think we talked about them on one of our Valentine's Day shows, like one of their killer couple shows. And yeah, I think that was one of the rare cases, because there's more than one. I'm not saying that it's like always, but that was
girls of stealing.
That's one of the rare cases where she was worse than he was.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
Weird, man.
But it doesn't usually happen. I mean, like I said, 99 times out of 100, it's the other way around.
There's one in the 80s, the most fat-looking dude, looked like Cal off Sanford and Son, big fat redneck type dude. He had a hot girlfriend from what I remember. They had a van and they'd go around and pick up underage girls. They'd both rape them and then kill them. She'd run around and she'd make the girls do stuff to her while she was driving. And the fucking boyfriend would just send her out. I think on at least one occasion, sent her out there to go kill the girls herself. And she had a gun on them, made them dig their own graves, and told them She told them that they were digging their own graves, and she gunned them down. They were like 16, two of them, and buried them.
I just can't imagine.
Oh, fucking monsters, man.
I can't imagine.
There
is literally no situation where I would even... I mean, I would have to hate you a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, and she was a normal looking...
To even think about doing that.
Yeah, and she was a normal looking woman. I want to say she was like maybe in her late 20s, early 30s.
So you never know.
And I don't remember their names. I just remember I remember his face, mostly. And I remember the pictures of the fucking victims. I read a book about it. A little soft cover. And, man, I was, like, fucking shocked, man. I was like, God, I can't believe that shit actually happened. And I was kind of in denial. I was like, this has to be sensationalized. But no, it wasn't. It was that damn leaded gasoline.
I'm telling you, man.
I can't understand how somebody could be that mean. I'm pretty mean. I'm not that mean. I mean, you know, I couldn't do anything like that to somebody just over something as dumb as sex. I mean, if it's warfare, you know what I mean? Or you're fighting for the survival of your people type of deal. I can understand killing enemies. I mean, fucking ex-army infantry, that's what you're about. But what? Killing people for sexual gratification?
Well, and just like innocent people, just people that you just like fucking picked up randomly.
Yeah.
You don't know them.
For something that's a few minutes of pleasure for you only? This is a big power trip? I don't understand. You got to have a fucked up ego. You must be really fucking a little person to get off on something dumb like that.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah.
It'll have a lot of hatred. But why would it manifest itself in a sexualized? I don't get it. You know?
I don't either.
Some kind of weird... And this is a woman doing it.
And I understand that even less.
Yeah, it's a woman doing it.
Being a woman myself, and I'm just like, you know, and I'm not saying I speak for all women everywhere, because obviously everybody's different, but it's just...
Evidently, she was a normal woman until that dude got a hold of her, and then she ended up raping and murdering underage girls. That was like her thing. I don't understand that, man. How do you swing that? She got addicted to it.
It's fucked up.
It's like something out of them Natural Born Killers or something, that movie.
It is. It's fucked up.
Yeah. Raping and killing underage girls.
Ben says there are people, quote unquote, thank you for putting that in quotes, who squash small animals to achieve sexual pleasure.
Yeah. Crush is what that's called.
Yep.
Nasty fuckers.
Which, why? How?
Mm.
Just, how could, I don't understand. It's like, it makes me want to cry just thinking about it. You know what I mean? I ain't like thinking about it.
It's got to be very rare.
It better be.
Yeah.
Holy shit. It's just... Ugh. So, yeah. Alright, so where were we? Okay, so we were talking about, like...
Closest thing I could ever do to that is, like, maybe fucking exterminating a bunch of roaches. I can get off on that. Die, bitches!
I could kill a roach.
Burn the roaches up!
I could kill a roach.
I fucking hate roaches.
I do, too. Other than that...
They're more like machines, though. They're not mammals.
Other than that, I don't really like... I can't even kill a spider, you know.
Yeah.
I like spiders.
I don't like spiders.
I know he doesn't like spiders.
I fucking hate roaches.
Every time I see a spider in the house, I pick him up and I'm just like, you gotta get out of here. Don't let Tom see you. put him outside. But I do not like cockroaches. But that's really the only living thing that I don't feel bad about killing is cockroaches. And maybe houseflies. But other than that, I'm just like, nah, I don't kill anything. I'm like, hey man, they got a right to be here much as I do, alright? I'm just letting them live their life as long as they're not bothering me.
Now, Mr. 88 saying it has to do with childhood back. Yeah, okay, whatever. But the thing is that how do these serial killers get these girls into that? They get their girlfriends into it. Like that. I think
I mean, those...
What was his name? Mary West?
Rosemary West,
Rosemary West. The victims that survived said that she was worse than he was.
Yeah.
The guy.
Sometimes but like I said...
he started it. He got her into it. He'd been doing it on his own.
Like I said, I always wonder, though, and there's no way to run this experiment, obviously, unless you have a time machine, is that I always wonder if these women had been left to their own devices and didn't meet this motherfucker, would they have turned out normal?
I think so.
They probably would have. I think most of the time.
Some kind of synergy builds up.
You know, look at like Myra Hindley, for example. Had she not met Ian Brady, would she have killed anybody? Doubt it.
They tortured that little girl, fucking recorded it and shit.
Yeah.
Terrible shit.
I think if she had never met that dude, I don't think it ever would have even occurred to her to do that shit. But she just got all fucking swept up in it. And that's what happens. It's like that frog in boiling water, man.
Yeah.
You know, they work on you slowly, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how it happens. I'm not saying that there aren't some women out there that are like sadistic and fucked up, because there absolutely are. I'm just saying that a lot of those killer couples cases, I think in most cases the women, if they had not met that dude, I don't think they would have done the shit.
The thing is there something hidden in a lot of women that they can activate, or did he choose her? Did he choose her because she had that ability to do that?
Yeah, maybe he's good at like picking that shit out.
Yeah, he's like
Mr. 88 makes a good point. It said usually the women are also severely abused and are trying to impress or stay in the good graces of their partner. Yeah, and maybe that's why they're worse in some cases, because they're like trying to up the ante. They're like, look, I can do this shit like even better than you can, kind of thing. Like I'm even more fucked up than you are.
Yeah.
I know, but it matters to them, I guess, because that's kind of because they're messed up.
Yeah. Let's get back to this case.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I'm gonna need another drink in a minute.
Yeah, come back.
All right. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so after the whole debacle with the food distribution, the food wasn't good enough, it wasn't enough of it, blah, blah, blah. And so 2 months after Patty Hearst was kidnapped, so this is in April of 1974, she sent an audio tape that said, by the way, you guys, I've joined the SLA cause, I'm all in with them now, and I have taken on the new name, Tania. She was named after, I guess, like one of Che Guevara's girlfriends or something like that. So, like I said, they all took on new names, which, like I said, very culty. Always watch if somebody asks you to do that. And she started calling her parents pigs and fascists and whatnot. So, probably the most famous aspect of this whole entire thing happened not too long, just like a few days after that tape was received by the media. This was April 15th, 1974. There was quite a violent bank robbery. This was in Hibernia. It was Hibernia Bank, which was in the Sunset District branch of it on Noriega Street in San Francisco. Now, very famously on the surveillance footage, they show like the members like coming into the bank. They all had, you know, automatic weapons, and they're all like ordering everybody to get down and shit like that. And Patty Hearst, carrying a gun, finger on the trigger, looking like she fucking owned the place. You know what I mean? Now, what they did, I guess there wasn't any audio, at least like, because I was watching a documentary about it, and they were talking to the FBI guys that worked on the case. And this never occurred to me that they would do this, but I'm like, well, duh. Like, once they said it, I was like, oh, well, yeah, it's obvious in retrospect. They're like, usually if we have a case where there's like surveillance footage and there's no audio, it's like what we'll usually do is we have like a contingent of like, you know, deaf people, because they can read lips. So it's like, so we just go in there and they tell us what the people said. You know what I mean? Just like they said, well, if there's audio tapes, we always like bring in blind people because they have like more, they have better hearing, and so maybe they can hear some shit on the tape that'll tell us like where it's coming from and shit like that. So that's what they did. They brought in like a bunch of deaf people and said, what is Patty Hearst saying on this tape, because we can't hear her.
I forgot to bring yours.
Apparently what she was saying while she was in this bank, like I said, she's holding the gun and she's got the finger on the trigger and everything like that. Apparently what she said was, I'm Tania, Up against the wall, motherfuckers. Which certainly doesn't sound like somebody that was not into it, but like I said, that's, you know, we'll get into that in a little bit, but that's apparently what she was saying, like on the videotape. Up against the wall, motherfuckers. Now, while the robbery was taking place, two guys, like customers, like actually walked into the bank and got shot. Now, neither one of them was killed. They were both wounded. But yeah, so it wasn't Patricia Hearst that shot them. It was like some of the other members. Now, according to some later accounts, like that kind of came out later, like, you know, during her later trial and whatnot, they were trying to argue, like I said, that perhaps Patricia Hearst was being forced into doing the bank robbery like against her will, maybe, because some of the witnesses said, well, she was like walking way behind them, and then like some later said, and there were photographs of this too, that the FBI had, that some of the other members of the SLA were actually pointing their guns at her, as though they were saying, it's like, hey, you better go along with this kind of shit and make it look good or whatever, because that's kind of like what they were arguing. So yeah, so this was like a huge big bank robbery, and very, very famous photo from it, very famous surveillance footage, and it just kind of like fucking went crazy, because you have to think at this point, you know, the kidnapping of Patricia has been a huge news story for like the last couple of months, and then the FBI, like everybody's working on it, and they're just like, we don't know where she is, and it's like now she's saying she's joined them. What the fuck is going on? Like her family are like, we still think, you know, we want her back, and it's like we don't know what her deal is, and they're forcing her to say that, and then all of a sudden everybody turns on the news and sees surveillance footage of her with a fucking, you know, M1 carbine or whatever, saying like up against the wall motherfuckers, like in a bank robbery. So everyone was like, what the fuck is actually going on here? So there was that.
For you young whippersnappers into the gun scene, the 30 carbine, I had one of them. The 30 carbine was the AR-15 of the 70s and the 80s. By the time I got one, they were old hat, though. Piece of shit. Only the Winchesters were any good, but funny little carbine.
Tyler the guy says, I never thought about it this way. Tyler the guy says, that's a horrifying idea that you could possibly meet a woman, fall in love with her, and never know that if she ended up with the wrong guy, she could have become a killer.
Thank you. That's what I was fucking thinking. I was like, is this hidden in women?
But see, you never know. You never know what kind of... Because, you know, people are their own... You know, they have their own choices and destiny, everything like that. But people are also influenced by other people around them, too.
You have to get them at the right stage of life. They had to be
so
young and malleable. They couldn't be a fully formed identity, I don't think. They have to be somebody who's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, they'd have to obviously have some kind of... Because I don't think you could just talk anybody into that shit. You know, not without some severe...
Young and deprived.
Brainwashing. But yeah, if somebody that was damaged in some way, somebody that was vulnerable in some way, and you could exploit that.
Yeah. And they'll do whatever you say to begin with.
Yeah.
They're real submissive to you. You know what we're going to do? We're going to kill somebody together. We'll be loved forever.
Okay.
That's what that was. Yeah, okay. Well, that's what that Barbie couple, I think that's how that started. That if we kill somebody together, we can't break up.
Yeah.
I think that was
how romantic.
Yeah, very romantic. I think that's how that started, if I remember correctly.
Girls, if your boyfriend says that to you, run very far in
the
other direction.
No, don't run. Fucking run to the police station.
And then run far in the other direction. Yeah. Just get the fuck out of there.
Get that shit on tape.
That too. Yeah, because get him off the streets for the benefit of mankind, please.
Because if you just run, he'll do it with somebody else.
That's true.
Get that motherfucker locked up. If he's talking about, we're going to have to kill this 15-year-old girl. And we will love each other forever. Only a bitch-ass motherfucker would come up with some shit like that anyway.
Right.
A dude that even just thinks that way, no, he doesn't need to go to jail. He needs to die. Going to jail is fucking...
Yeah, you should probably just hit him in the face with a shovel and bury him alive.
Call me,
or something.
all right?
Because that's no good is ever going to come of that.
No
good is ever going to come of that. People, and we talked about this before. Like I said, I'm all for like people that commit crimes and shit, like, especially if they're kind of bullshit crimes. You know, once they've done their time and they let them out, okay, fine, let them integrate back into society. People with that serial killer mindset, though, I'm not really sure that can be fixed.
No.
I'm not really sure that can be fixed.
No, well, once they do that, that's it. They need to be locked up and either for life or executed. That's it. You can't release them.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. I mean, even if they never did it again, you could never like trust them.
No, never.
You'd always be like looking over your shoulder. Yeah. Nobody would want them living next door.
And it's the same thing as a serial rapist. You know, as soon as the guy is identified as a serial rapist, he's got to get a life sentence. That's it. He'll just continue to do it. So the 3 strikes you're out law, I think, is bad. It's bullshit. But there's got to be exceptions. They know that there are things like serial killers and serial rapists. So they just need to watch those. If a dude gets convicted twice of that shit, on that second time, he shouldn't be able... He can't
Yeah, they're like, well, that's it.
You're a serial rapist, dude. Yeah.
We're just going to throw you in a hole.
And there's a lot of other things. It's not just that. They get picked up for a lot of other shits that's related to that. Like attempted abductions and fucking peeping Tom shit. And fucking... what do you call it? Flashing people. Same dudes that are serial...
Yeah,
rapists
they all
do a bunch
do,
of other shit.
Yeah, they do like shit like that. Like when they're, well, I'm not going whole hog this time around, but they're just going to do a little minor shit. But yeah, that's what they do.
You need to have a professional observe them, figure them out, and if they become identified as that, then you got to send them to then it'd be prison. You send them to what they call a hospital for, you know what I mean, mental help.
Yeah,
that's another thing you can do.
Tyler, the guy, said, I'm usually against the death penalty, but sometimes I'll see a case so bad that I'm like, yeah, okay, we can go ahead and kill this one. Yeah, pretty much. I'm with you on that.
No, in no way am I against the death penalty. No, not here in the United States. I know England has a thing against it, and I don't think Canada has it, because they come from a history where they hung everybody for anything. You know, if a kid stole a fucking piece of bread, they'd fucking hang him.
Like
back
I said,
in the
that's
fucking,
way too far.
That's not what we're talking about here. This is America. I mean, we got real criminals. Okay, we got real criminals here. You can't just let them walk around. What are you talking about? No. The problem here is that they make the execution a big fucking expensive thing that takes fucking 20 or 30 years. It needs to be like China. Like, we know you did it. We got it. You're dead to rights. You gonna die. Today. Okay, fuck all this appeal shit. They take them out and they just shoot them. I've seen the videos. They just shoot them in the back of the head in China. And they're like, that's how you do it. Because... that's the same kind of shit you see on a battlefield execution. That's humane. Soldiers like me were dying much worse, just torn to fucking shreds by fucking shrapnel, you know. And guys like me weren't committing any crimes. Dudes in other armies weren't committing crimes. They were just doing what they're told. So that's an easy way out, just shooting somebody in the back of the head. If you're a fucking serial killer or a serial rapist, I think serial rapists need to go. I mean,
well,
why?
Serial rapist is generally just a serial killer that hasn't killed anybody.
Yeah, they just need to go.
I mean, it's the same mindset.
You'd have some fuckers going, well, that's his sexual orientation, though. We got to protect.
Nobody's gonna say that.
Yeah, you gotta kill that fucker.
Nobody's gonna say that. That's fucked up in any fucking. Everybody thinks that's fucked up.
Everybody's got fucking moms, you know what I mean, and fucking wives and daughters and shit. You can't have those dudes walking around.
It's true.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave's here. What's up? Haven't talked to you for a while.
Yeah.
Because we haven't been to Mannequins in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Said, hey, you two, been busy. Yeah, so have we. Just thought I'd pop in here and say hello. Well, hello. Hello, Dave. How are you? All right, so where was I? Okay, so yeah, the bank robbery.
Bank robbery. It's a famous fucking video.
It is,
footage, yeah.
Like I said,
she's looking all panache and shit with her fucking 30 carbine and her. I think didn't she have a beret on?
I think she did.
Yeah, she.
Well, okay, I don't remember if she had the beret on in the footage, but the famous photo of her standing in front of the SLA flag, she had the beret on.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, ooh, kicky.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Revolutionary fashion show.
Right. Like military fashion show that and one song. But yeah, so yeah. So she's in there, and like I said, I don't think that video really helped her cause any, because like I said, it really did look like she was really on board with the shit. Even though later on it did come out, because they had some other photographs and stuff like that that showed that some of the other members of the SLA were maybe possibly like pointing guns at her instead of at the other people at the bank, which maybe would suggest that they were kind of like, hey,
it could have been muzzle indiscipline.
That's what I mean. That's so yeah. There's no way of knowing, but I'm just saying that's what the defense argued.
In the infantry, we are constantly pointing muzzles at each other. There's no choice. Everybody's got guns, and there's fucking dozens of you in the back of a fucking truck or in a fucking helicopter. You're pointing guns at each other all the time. You just trust your fucking fellow soldier. These that he knows what he's doing, that shit's all safe and there isn't around in
that
the
he's
chamber.
not going to sneeze
And
and blow your head off.
Yeah, I've never seen an accidental discharge like that. Everybody was good with him. So it was okay if your buddy pointed a gun at you. It's happening. He's just cradling it and turning, you know what I mean? It's going to point, muzzle sweeping everything. It's not this. You're not on the range. You're a professional. But that's probably what they were doing. They were just robbing the bank and they were sweeping the muzzles across people.
Yeah, it's possible
that's
what it was. But I'm just saying that the defense argued it's like, look, they're pointing the guns at her, which meant that they were forcing her to go along with it.
Probably not.
Even though, like I said, it could go either way, honestly. So yeah, so that was a very big, very famous kind of thing that happened. Not too long after that, on May 16th, 1974, there's a place in Inglewood, California, called Mel's Sporting Goods. And there were two members of the SLA who were a married couple named William and Emily Heiress. Now, back then, like I said, everybody took silly new names. So they were actually known as Tico and Yolanda for whatever reason. So they're in this sporting goods store shoplifting. I think they bought some shit too, but I guess maybe they didn't have enough money, so they're like, well, maybe we need some more shit, so we're going to steal it. I heard that that William was stealing a pair of socks. I don't know if that's true or not. That's like one of the cops said. But he was like stealing a pair of sweat socks or something like that. So him and his wife are leaving the store. Now, Patty Hearst was in the van across the street, like while they were shoplifting, right? So what happens is that the manager sees them stealing shit from the store. And he goes out after them, like to confront them, like, hey, motherfuckers, you gonna pay for that or whatever. And then William and the store manager started like kind of scuffling, right? And during this, William had a pistol and it fell out of his waistband. And then at that point, Patty Hearst took it upon herself to essentially open fire on the front of the store so that her compatriots could get away. Like, she didn't kill anybody, she didn't hurt anybody, but she just like fucking opened up on the front of the store, like shot it all up. So the manager was gonna shoot back at her, but she was like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on? Because she's like, it was like an automatic weapon, you know what I mean? Yeah. So there was that. So she actually helped them get away. And then the two of them, like the three of them, actually like hijacked a couple cars and kidnapped the owners, like from the store. One of the owners, apparently, I don't know if it was the owner's son or something like that, but he was like, he thought Patty Hearst was just the bee's knees. He thought she was like super friendly and all this other kind of stuff, which I thought was like strange, but I'm like, okay. Now, what ended up happening on this particular day after they had done this fucking shootout and all that and the shoplifting? Meanwhile, the cops had figured out where the SLA's like hideout was, and so they had gone and like surrounded it. Now, apparently, William and Emily and Patty, I guess they heard about it, and so they went someplace else, or they were told about it. So they didn't go back to the hideout. They fucked off and like went someplace else, right? But what ended up happening was either that day or the next day, I can't remember exactly, the cops, like I said, surrounded the SLA's, hideout, and they, at first, this was in LA, by the way, because, the whole thing had started in San Francisco, but there was so much heat on the SLA in San Francisco that they fucked off to LA, but it took, like, the cops a long time to figure out that they had moved to LA. One thing that they said that was interesting on the documentary was that they were like, well, the police departments in San Francisco and LA were, like, very, very different. Whereas, like, the San Francisco police department were a lot more chill and probably wouldn't have just like shot you in the face when you walked out. But the LAPD, they're like, we're very, very militarized, and they like really did not fuck around. So it's like basically they were like, well, come out right now, and then they're just like, okay, never mind, we're blowing the shit up. So so basically that's what happened. They asked them to all come out. They're just like, come out and you won't be hurt, blah de blah. And none of them would come out though. And apparently, no one's entirely sure. The story usually goes that the SLA members started shooting at the cops first. I don't know if that's the case, but that's usually the narrative that you hear. So the SLA members started shooting, said, hey, we're not coming out. We're going to fight to the death or whatever. So the cops obliged and started shooting back. So I think like the shootout lasted like 2 hours, I believe. And in the end, they were throwing in some tear gas canisters, and apparently one of them exploded or some shit like that, and like set the house on fire. So in this standoff, I guess if you want to call it that, I mean, they shot the shit out of the place too. I think they shot like 5,000 rounds or something like that. So Donald DeFreeze was killed. Most people think that he shot himself in the head rather than be taken alive. And Angela Atwood, Nancy Ling Perry, William Wolfe, Patricia Soltzik, I think is how you pronounce her last name, and Camilla Hall, members of the SLA, were all killed. Now, so the cops, one of the FBI guys, or the SWAT, or whoever were doing the shit, or the LAPD guys, they were like, well, when we did the siege, we weren't actually sure if Patty Hearst was in there or not, but he's like, the cops were like, we basically wanted these people dead. So, I mean, he basically said essentially that. So it's like, he didn't say that they didn't care if she was in there or not, but they were basically like, well, shit happens kind of attitude. I kind of got that impression that that's what he was talking about. Now, according to some SLA members later on, like they were interviewed, they said that cops absolutely knew that Patty Hearst was not in there. So I guess they kind of felt that it was safe to just like blow everybody else away. I don't really know. But they kind of made it seem like, because they made a big show of, you know, yeah, they pulled out all the bodies after the firefight was over, and, you know, they came out to the media and it's like, we wanted to inform the Hearst family that, and they drew it out like it was suspense. Like I was, you know what I mean? Like I'm watching it on the documentary. I'm like, would you just tell the man if his daughter's dead or not? It's like, they're just like it's a fucking movie ending or some shit like that. But he's like, you know, we wanted to tell that Patty Hearst was not among the bodies found, you know what I mean? Because she had fucked off with like those other two that she did the robbery with. So they actually went on the run, and they were on the run for a long time. Like they didn't, the cops had no fucking idea where they went, and they actually had some people helping them too, like just people that they knew through, like I said, the SLA was not a big group, you know, it was maybe 11-12 people, but they did have some people that were kind of like sympathetic to their cause or whatever, so you know, they could kind of go around, and they had friends of friends that would like give them money and like give them a place to stay like for brief periods of time and shit like that. So basically, after it was determined that Patty Hearst was not among the dead, they basically issued arrest warrants for the Harrises, the couple that had done the, you know, the shoplifting, and for Patty Hearst, and that would be just all the felonies that they were the kidnapping charges and all that other kind of stuff. So basically, Patty Hearst stayed with them for a while, to a point where she was helping them make bombs. They actually used a couple of these bombs. They were in 1975. They were actually going to blow up some cops, but they weren't successful. One of them went off, but it didn't hurt anybody, and the other one didn't go off at all. But she was like building bombs and shit like that. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but there were actually 2 more bank robberies that were pulled off by SLA members. One of them was in Sacramento, and that was in February of 1975, and there was another one in Carmichael, California, in April of 1975. Now, in this last one in Carmichael, a woman was killed. A woman named Myrna Lee Opsahl. She was actually a customer. She was like, an older, she had 4 kids or something like that. She just came in to make a deposit, and apparently Emily Harris, who was one of the ones that had done the shoplifting, she actually shot the woman, like when the woman was trying to run out of the bank, and killed her. So, you know, there's murder again. Well, like I said, they murdered that other dude like earlier too. So finally, after Patty Hearst and the Harrises were on the run for, I believe, 18 months, it was, like after the firefight, they actually finally tracked them down, because, you know, you have to think she was on the FBI most wanted list and everything like that. So, and everybody was like, why the fuck can't you find her? You know. But it might have been because, I kind of feel like it might have been because the SLA were such a small group. They were kind of like easy to, it's not like they had like super big connections like all over the country or anything like that. They could just kind of wander around wherever they wanted. Nobody knew where they were going. So they did finally catch up with them, though. Ironically, back in San Francisco. So Patty Hearst was arrested along with another SLA member whose name was Wendy Yoshimura. And they actually did find some money in the apartment that was from the Carmichael robbery. Like it was, marked from that bank. So they knew that she was, because Patty Hearst, I don't think she'd been in the bank for that one, but she drove the getaway car. You know what I mean? So she was still involved in the shit. Now, apparently, while she was being arrested and she was being booked and everything like that, they asked her what her occupation was, Patty Hearst, and she said, quote unquote, urban guerrilla.
Yeah.
So, all right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So she was still kind of in the thrall at this point. Now, one thing that was brought up a lot at her later trial was that when she was arrested, Patty Hearst only weighed 87 pounds. She looked bad. I mean, she looked kind of sickly. Like, it looked like kind of some of her hair had fallen out.
How old was she?
19, 20.
And then how tall was she? You don't know?
I don't know.
87 pounds. That's starvation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And her hair was falling out. That's stress.
I mean, it looked like from the pictures. She just looked real thin and real pale. Also, she underwent examination by a psychologist, and the psychologist called her, quote, a low IQ, low affect zombie.
Okay.
They did an IQ test on her, and apparently her IQ had dropped to 112, whereas before it had been 130, which is actually fairly high.
Yeah.
I don't know how accurate. It might have just been from stress and everything like that.
Yeah, checks out.
But
horror and trauma reduces people's ability to think. That's why they'll call it like political terrorism. What would be worse is like what fucking Colonel Kurtz is talking about in fucking Apocalypse Now. Horrorism. That's what the Mexican mob uses. If someone does some really bad traumatic shit to you, directly to you through maybe your family, your IQ will drop. Your response to it will be childlike and uncoordinated because you're a psychological casualty.
yeah,
And the military knows all about it. That's why sometimes I've said in earlier shows that being in a recon platoon, working with snipers and other part of the job of the snipers that would give us Overwatch if they were ever put on the attack is to maximize violence on the objection excuse me, I've been drinking. Maximize violence on the objective, or maximize horror on the objective. What you're trying to do is you're trying to cause psychological casualties in the enemy. All right, by doing bad things to them, because their response will be unorganized, and ineffectual. You can make your opponent dumb by horrifying them. That's what happened to her. You put her under a lot of stress, the faculties start shutting down.
Yeah, I mean, they said, at least according to the psychologist that examined her after she was arrested, not only that, but they said she just, like I said, she seemed real lethargic. Yeah. She seemed to not remember a lot from before the abduction. Yeah. She had taken up smoking, like chain smoking. She had PTSD essentially. She had nightmares, things like that.
You could go to Yale, get a high IQ genius motherfucker. You know what I mean? He's highfalutin and arrogant and real intelligent and can do all this advanced stuff. You beat on him for a few days, even a few minutes, real bad, and then give him an IQ test. It'll be lower. Especially if it's the dude who heard him giving him the test. Yeah. Fucking Soviets knew all about it through brainwashing techniques. That's why they would torture people. You're a lot more receptive to new ideas when you're in that state, because you're just trying to survive, and you can't think clearly.
Well, yeah, and like I said, that's
okay, all right, then you must be right. And usually, the more intelligent a person is, the more self-doubt is in them. They don't have that. What do they call that? Dunning-Kruger. They don't have
like,
that.
Where the dumber you are, like the more confident you are that you're right about everything.
The smarter a person is, the less confident they are. So you could use that as a fucking chisel to get into a crack somewhere.
That's kind of the bitch of life, isn't it?
Yeah. High intelligence is not a big advantage.
It depends. It depends on the situation.
When you're in a savage environment,
right,
it'll work against you because you'll just suffer more. Yeah. Been there, done that.
But see, the thing about it, as we were mentioning earlier, because the psychologist recognized these signs of trauma in her, obviously, but she didn't have any quote-unquote mental illness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the fact that they were trying... Because, as I said, this is the 1970s. This is 1975. It's like they didn't really... Yeah, people had heard the term brainwashing, but it wasn't like a clinical term. People didn't really know that much about Stockholm Syndrome. They didn't know anything like that. So it's like it wouldn't be... You wouldn't really be able to argue that it's like, oh, well, I robbed a bank and shot some motherfuckers because I was brainwashed. There wasn't any legal precedent for it.
The closest analogy that a civilian would understand, especially a civilian woman, was that you fell in the clutches of a bad boyfriend. An abusive boyfriend can get a woman to do all kinds of fucked up shit.
It's true.
All right. And it's brainwashing, basically. And the dude is just a fucking psycho and he's abusive. And he's just doing it by instinct. He wasn't trained to be a brainwasher. He's just... It's kind of what happened to him maybe when he was a kid or...
Yeah, because a lot of times they kind of repeat cycles.
You're right. And the next thing you know, he's got his girlfriend out there turning tricks for him and just doing fucking fucked up shit. And he beats her and stuff, and she stays with him. She needs him.
Well, a lot
That's
of times,
fucking brainwashing.
A lot of times too is they take away their
dignity and self fucking value.
They take away their so they feel like they can't get by without him, and also sometimes they take away, they cut off all their they alienate all their friends and their family, like cut them off from other support systems.
The way there's no out, they're trapped.
Things like that. Yeah, it's like take away their car. They take away anything that they have that gives them like an independence.
It's basically what an interrogator does, an enemy interrogator when you're in captivity by some kind of an enemy army and they're brainwashing you for propaganda technique. But they don't really do that anymore. It's a waste of time. It's really a thing of the Cold War because they thought it would be good propaganda to get the world to see some American soldier fucking denounce his own country. But it backfired. Whenever they showed that shit, the American people didn't fucking go, oh, I guess we are wrong, you know what I mean? No, the American people got pissed off. You tortured our soldier. They doubled down in the war effort.
Yeah,
so there's no reason. Yeah. Well, the Soviets projected their own weaknesses onto other people.
I feel like that happens.
That happens a lot. Yeah. They're like, well, they're cowards. And if we do this, and we're kind of cowardly, if we, they will buckle to us. No, they'll get stronger. You see America making the fucking same problems. Well, Iraq now knows that it's weak, so it will listen to us. No, it didn't. We got ejected. Afghanistan now knows it's weak. We can do whatever we want. No, they ran us out of there. If you fuck with people, they get pissed off. They get tougher.
Pretty much everybody. Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like
they get tougher. They don't get weaker.
Just get mad.
Yeah, they don't get weaker. They get tougher.
You fuck with them enough, they just get mad.
Who gets weaker are fucking rich motherfuckers that have fucking coming up out of these fucking rich families, little laptops. They are projecting their weakness onto the world because they haven't even been in a fist fight, and they're commanding armies. Okay. They don't know that if you beat on a motherfucker, he'll get up eventually and fucking kill you. All right? And just give him time.
You can only fuck with people so long.
Yeah, right. But, these dudes, like I said, that are commanding America, even its armies and its generals, they've never been in a fucking fist fight. They've never been in a fucking fist fight. You just look at their physical fucking fitness, they look like shit. Because they are shit. The good ones have all left. Long time ago.
Mr. 88 said, what Tom is saying right now about the, what we were saying about the abusive partners and stuff, ties directly back into the female serial killer partner participant conversation we had earlier and why they bend to do what they do. And like I said, it's a lot more complicated than just saying, that's why I don't really I'm really uncomfortable with people saying people that are in abusive relationships, oh, why don't you just leave? It's like, it's not really that simple.
They're too weakened to leave.
A lot of times. There's a lot of other factors going on. And so that's kind of the thing about, I get that, when at Patty Hearst's trial, where they were trying to say that, she got into like the SLA, like she started believing them and like believing in their cause and stuff, and like voluntarily, because she even said specifically on some of those audio tapes, people are saying I'm brainwashed and that's ridiculous and all this other kind of stuff. She said all that stuff like on the tapes. But I don't know. I kind of
think brainwashed people know they're brainwashed in certain sense.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing too.
It's just
and
like an abused girlfriend would defend the fucking the boyfriend for a long time until she's finally away from him and go, yeah, he did kind of trick me. That wasn't me, you know.
Yeah, it happens a lot. Like I said, it's no shame against people. It's like people are imperfect. Our brains betray us all the time. Yeah. Everybody wants to have their kind of put their best face forward, but it's like we all have weaknesses. We all have, and a lot of times if you don't know what your weaknesses are, like someone else can spot them and can exploit them, whether they're aware of doing it or not. Yeah. So it's like, I don't really feel like, I don't know. That's why I'm just kind of like, you should probably just be fucking, just chill out with people, man, because it's like, you don't know what they're what's going on in their life. And it's like, shit can happen. And even if you say, oh, that wouldn't happen to me, or that wouldn't, and I, maybe I've said that a couple times, like when we talked about like shit about cults and stuff like that. The only reason I say I'd never get sucked into a cult is because I'm not a joiner, and if anybody ever asked me to join anything, I'm just like, no. So it's like that's probably why, but because I don't want to be around other people. But so I think that's probably why that. But it's just like, I'm not saying that it's like, it might have happened to me too. Like I could have like hooked up with some dude that like seemed normal at first, and then he went kind of crazy, and like you don't realize.
I go crazy all the time. She ought to see it now.
Yeah, but I've always known that you were like that. I've known you were like that from the beginning. And plus, I'm always just like, why stop being crazy?
Yeah. I think what happened in this case, I know we're not done with it. We probably got a lot left.
Yeah, well, not a lot, but yeah, something. We got to talk about the trial and the aftermath.
I know why. They're saying, well, she must have joined. You know what I mean? She must have knew. I think what happened was they abducted her. She wasn't in her right mind. She went through the very essence of like brainwashing, which is what happens to like an abused girlfriend. And she went along with it. She thought she was in her right mind though. But that's the tricks that minds play. And I think of the other SLA members. I don't think they were the sharpest fucking tacks,
No, they didn't.
And they were like, oh, she joined us. So that's just how they saw
it. I said, they probably thought, oh, she like woke up to the reality that her parents are like part of the problem that are like oppressing all the people. Yeah. And she did say that kind of shit, so it was pressure. She was a captive. Yeah. She was under all that pressure. And she thought she got recruited. Because that's just the way the mind tries to defend itself. See, this kind of shit fascinates me, though, because, like I said, it's so complicated. Like, everyone's motives are so complicated. And a lot of times I think maybe I have the feeling, and maybe this is uncharitable, but, like, just listening to her talk and stuff like that, she didn't seem like the brightest. Yeah. I knew she was very young, like, in those tapes and stuff like that. And she was probably very vulnerable. She was probably very...
She's 19. She's in college, so they have this altruism into them. And these guys are telling her things that are true to half true. Yeah. But the methods that they're using are fucking criminal. Right. All right? You don't abduct people. You don't murder people. You don't rob banks to try... This is fucking stupid. Because you're not going to build an army that way. You're going to get fucking stomped into the ground. Right? Yeah. They don't even need the army. The police can do it, which they did. All right?
Yeah, they killed half of them.
Like I said, it'd been better had they just fucking... They had fucking a Hearst. Why didn't they make a newspaper? Yeah. And have her as the newscaster. You know what I mean? Or something like that. They would have been better at information warfare.
That would have been a lot more
because you couldn't have fucking arrested them for it.
Yeah, because it's not illegal.
Because it's not illegal, and they could just sit there and talk shit until... And if it was true, then people would have been convinced, and then they would have been players.
Like I said, if you're trying to get somebody over to your point of view, it's always better. Like, terrorist shit, that's not going to work, because everyone's be like, hey, you're fucking murderous motherfuckers. We don't want anything to do with that.
There is always a place for the gun. I'm infantry. There's always a place for it. But it's not in this. Most warfare is fucking political. It's warfare by other means. The information and ideas. The gun's always kind of like when there's no other option. But the thing is it's one of the weaker options. That's when the system's gone. You use that.
Yeah. And I get that they felt that. I mean... Yeah. I was listening to some interviews, like I said, with some of the SLA members that they weren't there like when the abduction took place, but they, were members of it. And their whole thing, they started getting radicalized, if you want to use that word, because of Watergate and stuff like that. But they said particularly it was Kent State. That actually, if you guys remember that, we never did a show about that, but
National Guard shot up some fucking students,
killed 4 and wounded 9, I think, unarmed college students.
The students were throwing rocks and bricks at them though, and they opened fire.
And that was like a big, but they said that was kind of like a big, they said, it'd been like wake up call with Vietnam and Watergate and everything like that, but they're like, that was kind of like the catalyst for, holy shit, they're killing us. That kind of like made them think that they wanted to like fight back against the system or whatever. That's what a couple of the members like said, that was kind of a big catalyst for them. Tyler, the guy, said the difference is Tom is lovable crazy, not oh shit crazy. Except when he's on trend, then he's oh shit crazy.
When I'm on trend, I'm the fucking Green Goblin for fucking that first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
But yeah, most of the time you're just like lovable crazy. Like I said, if you ever
misery.
If you ever go oh shit crazy, I'm just like, you're doing that again. Let's not do that. But yeah, so as I mentioned, because they didn't really know a lot about brainwashing and shit like that, and because it appeared from all the shit that she said, like all the audio tape, because there was like a lot of letters and audio tapes and all this other kind of stuff that had been released in the media, that it looked like she was going along with them willingly. So people found it hard to believe, and especially because the prosecution pointed out the fact that it's like, she was with just William and Emily Heiress for, 18 months or however long it was they were on the run. She could have escaped like multiple times. They're like, look at the, for example, the time when they were, when William and Emily were in the store doing the shoplifting, and it's like she was just sitting out in the van. She could have just driven off, you know what I mean? Like while they were in the store, but she chose to, shoot at the front of the store and could have killed somebody. She didn't, thankfully. But, it's like, so why did she do that? Now, I mean, later on she came out and argued, it's like, oh, I had just been trained to do that. And it's like, I didn't even think about it. Like she was like, oh, some of my SLA brothers and sisters are in danger and I have to make sure that they get away. And that was like, she wasn't really thinking about it. But you can see how people would be less inclined to be sympathetic, because it really did look like she was going along with it. And like I said, she probably had ample opportunities to escape and she didn't. So that really kind of didn't help her cause. But like I said, I don't really like to lean too hard into that, because, people say the same thing about like abused wives and things like, well, why didn't you just leave? You could have just left and blah, blah, blah. And it's a lot more complicated than that.
She got captured. If she did get captured, I think she did. If she was a captive, she wasn't in the right state of mind. She couldn't. They swung her, but it was temporary. She couldn't think properly.
Ben says, in the end, the SLA was just a gang of bank robbers who pretended to be social revolutionaries for kicks. Yeah, it really does kind of seem like that. Like I said, they really... Yeah, they made a big show about like having all these ideals and everything, some of which sounded real good and stuff, but it's like they really didn't... The shit that they were doing didn't... I really don't see how they thought that they were going to manifest any of the stuff that they were talking about. Yes, they were trying to get attention. I mean, that worked, I guess, but it didn't really rally anyone to their cause, though.
They were delusional.
Yeah, I just don't think...
This is something that they read about in some kind of Marxist publication. They're probably looking at Che Guevara and shit like that. Because they were... This is an out-of-date tactic that never really succeeded, especially not after the 30s and the 20s. That era had gone by. Technology... And that would never happen in America. The infrastructure wouldn't allow it. In warfare, terrain dictates everything. And the American terrain doesn't allow it. It's got too much of a vast, complex road system. It's too interconnected. You can't dominate the land space here. So no, they were tripping. They were reading books written by people who don't have any military experience. It's just political theory. They thought they could start a rebellion. No, not like that. Not in a country this size, this diverse. You know what I mean? Maybe a little bitty European country a long time ago with a limited road system and maybe like a couple of train tracks going through it. Yeah, but that's by American standards, that would be a local event, not a nationwide event. You could do shit locally, in the United States. Locally, you know, in Europe, that local event might be pretty big. It might cover a country. But here, that would just be local. Can't do it.
Well, and sometimes, like, it's less so nowadays, but I kind of feel like before the advent of the internet, like, shit could happen a state over and you'd never hear about it.
Yeah. Now, you say, well, wait a minute, the Bolsheviks overthrew Russia. It's a huge landmass. Yeah, but like I said, most of it was controlled by a central train station in Moscow. And if you looked at where the train tracks and the roads were, it wasn't a very big landmass. The rest of it was inaccessible and empty. So, effectively, by American standards, during the Bolshevik Revolution, Russia was small. That would have been like the equivalent to maybe like a state or two. It's just that it was kind of spread out and thinly populated, just little roads going everywhere. So the Bolsheviks could do it because that would have been a local revolution. It ended up fucking affecting millions of people, though, adversely.
So, yeah. So, basically, so they have, like, all these psychiatrists come in to have a look at her. They have one from UCLA and stuff like that. He was actually the court-appointed one. And he actually worked for free. After he examined her, he was the one that actually wrote to then President Jimmy Carter asking for Hearst to be released because he thought that she was a victim of brainwashing and that she hadn't done any of the stuff of her own volition. Now, so she was in police custody for several weeks. And afterwards, she came out and basically said, you know, she repudiated the SLA. Now, her first, you know, so like you said, as soon as she was out of that environment for a few weeks, she came and, like, denounced them, you know what I mean? And said, yeah, they forced me to, like, do all that stuff.
Read what Tyler said on the bottom right there. Exactly, my brother.
Said, America is essentially 50 different countries banded together with wildly different perspectives spread out. Anyone who thinks they could take it over are delusional. Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah, it's just, there's just so much, it's just so complicated.
It would be like trying to take over all of Europe 5 times over. Basically. It's not going to happen.
But so the first lawyer she got, who was named Terrence Hallinan, he actually told her not to talk to psychiatrists, not to talk to anybody. He wasn't going to put her on the stand or anything. His whole thing was he thought that the best defense, because you couldn't really, like I said, you couldn't argue brainwashing. They didn't really know about Stockholm Syndrome or anything like that. So he was saying that, well, let's say that the SLA members drugged you, like you didn't know about it, like they were slipping you LSD or something like that, so you didn't know it was going on most of the time, and that's how they forced you into some shit, and like, so, you know, your judgment was impaired or whatever. Now, for whatever reason, that attorney didn't last too long, and then that attorney was replaced with the very famous F. Lee Bailey, who most people probably know from the O.J. Simpson trial, but he was like even famous before that. So he was going to argue, I don't think he was going to use the word brainwashing, but he was going to argue that she had been coerced into doing this stuff. If not, like I said, and that was kind of like the standard at the time was, yeah, you could argue coercion for committing a crime, but it had to be like clear and present danger kind of situation. It's just kind of like, yeah, I robbed that store, but like this dude had a gun to my head making me do it. It had to be like, you had to think your life was in danger, like right that very second, like I'm going to be killed if I don't do this right now. They didn't really have any precedent for somebody who'd been in captivity for such a long time that she had essentially like taken on perhaps the beliefs of the people around her. And so even when she was able to escape, like she didn't, and, you know, things like that. So they're like, she almost kind of like internalized, you know, their views and their training and stuff, because they did do training. They trained her to use all the guns, and they did all that other kind of stuff too. So so that's what F. Lee Bailey was going to argue. So he was essentially going to argue brainwashing, but he just wasn't calling it that. He was basically saying that she was like low-key coerced into doing all this stuff. And, you know, people were saying, well, maybe not, it's not a winning strategy because, like I said, it's never been done before. Like, you know, you can't really say that she's being forced right then because she could have escaped anytime, and it's like she didn't, so there was that whole thing. So F. Lee Bailey comes on. So she gets arraigned for the bank robbery, like the main bank robbery that had like the whole video thing in it. Now, interestingly, the judge on the case, who actually, spoiler alert, died like halfway through and then was replaced with another one. He seems like he was kind of biased against her from the start. Like he seemed like even from before the shit even started, like he wasn't buying this whole she was coerced into stuff. And so it's almost like he wouldn't allow, I don't know, it just seemed kind of biased where it's like a lot of the evidence that they were like the defense was trying to introduce, like let's, you know, introduce all these audio tapes she made with all these psychiatrists and all of this other stuff, and he wouldn't allow any of that, but he would allow like all the stuff that the prosecution was, you know what I mean? So it seemed like a little bit one-sided is what I'm gonna say. So there was that, and there was also kind of a thing where F. Lee Bailey probably unwisely chose to put Patty Hearst on the stand, and she didn't make a great impression, I guess. She came across as, like I said, very lethargic. I guess that in the prison they'd been giving her some drugs, like her psychiatric drugs or something like that, so maybe she was like zoned out a little bit, but everybody said she didn't really make that great of an impression. Like she seemed just like blah blah blah. She seemed robotic was the word that they used, which you'd think would have acted in her favor, but I guess it didn't.
She was probably in shock and not knowing what the fuck she actually did, probably questioning herself, why the hell did I do this?
Right, maybe.
Well, you gotta understand she's 19.
Yeah.
From a soft
19, 20 something.
Soft ass background, okay? This girl had never been fucking had a hard day in her life. Fucking, she had never been under any kind of pressure, and she fell into the hands of these fucking wild ass revolutionaries that scared the shit out of her. And her defense mechanisms kicked in, and she just yielded. A lot of young people, even fairly strong young people, don't have a real strong identity or sense of self. They kind of go with the flow. Whoever's around them, they're like, well, okay, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, you don't really
like that.
I feel like you don't really come into your identity until you're older.
Yeah, mid-20s.
Maybe even older than that. I don't know.
By mid-20s, I kind of knew what my deal was. I didn't really fucking have clarity until I was fucking 30. Around 30.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I feel like probably
I'm
the
like,
same.
okay, it's kind of like, and this is something a lot of people fucking don't really understand. It's part of the reason why I'm a real critic of the Western system. Boys' frontal lobes do not mature at the same rate that girls do. They have a big advantage over boys during the school years, especially when puberty hits. Boys should not be in school as teenagers. They need to be doing something else. And then once they're fucking 19 or 20, then they can go back and...
Once they've settled down a
Once
little bit.
then they can go back and then you can learn a lot better. The only ones that end up getting degrees and all these educations are basically low testosterone males because they're not under the effects of that shit. So what you have is fucking betas and kind of unfit males getting all the fucking education and power. If the education system was different, you'd have better men in power, better quality men. So and this is just biology. Boys mature a lot more slowly than girls do. We just didn't evolve for that. We evolved more for action than thinking. And ethnicity is a factor. Not everybody's the same. Some people produce a lot more of this testosterone than others. You know, all you gotta do is just look at the bloodstreams, and you can tell. So I forgot where I was going with this, but women come into their own a lot earlier than guys, but it's still, a 19-year-old girl is still pretty shaky, you know. A guy, I don't really trust him 100% till about 30. You know?
I'm going to go even older than that.
But he is who he is at 30. That, you know,
I'd go 35, but yeah, on the whole
whatever.
whole
You're a
I
woman.
agree.
You're fucking skeptical of men. As a guy,
I am very skeptical.
But here's the thing: if you want to wage war, you want to get into a fight, you want to have a bunch of fucking dudes that can kick ass and get some shit done. You want fucking guys in their late teens, early 20s, because they'll do what they're told. And they're
not really thinking about it.
They're not thinking about it. And they'll disregard their own safety. They'll
Sure.
fucking do all kinds of heroism and fucking bravery and shit.
Yeah, they'll do all kind of stupid shit.
Yeah, they'll do all kinds of stupid shit. But that's what you need at that time. That's what,
that's what I'm saying.
That's what
They'll do
they're
all kinds of
built
stupid
for.
shit.
That's why
Doing stupid shit.
nature has selected that in them. And they need older guys to develop it and to channel it and to direct them. You know what I mean? To get that, to put that energy to good use. And even the Romans knew it. They knew. That system no longer really there. It's all breaking down. It'll come back.
Victor says puberty made me gay.
Yeah, puberty can make a motherfucker gay, Vic. I guess
Sure, it happens.
puberty make a gay man gay.
Next Dimension Media said, I read a lot of Stephen King books as a kid. I read a lot of Stephen King's books. So did I. He seemed to be obsessed with this case. Yeah, I think he was, actually. He wrote a lot about it. And Kitty Genovese, he wrote about it, which I kind of want to do a show about that, too. That was that woman that got murdered on that supposedly busy like New York street, and everybody just stood around and watched it from the window and didn't call anybody. He said, I think it influenced several books and movies like Hardcore. Yeah. Tyler the Guy, I'm 21, yet feel like I have the energy and physique of a 60-year-old.
Go on test.
That's funny. I mean, So basically, so they put her on the stand, which, like I said, was probably not, probably didn't help. Now, the prosecution is trying to paint her as what they called a rebel in search of a cause. Like, they were basically saying, well, she's just this poor little rich girl. She decided she was going to, like, rebel against her parents. And this was the way she chose to do it. She's going to, like, hang out with these fucking revolutionaries and do all this crazy shit and, like, live out this Bonnie and Clyde fantasy of, like, being a fucking, bank robber or whatever the fuck. And, when she came out later and said that when she'd been abducted by the SLA, that they'd actually kept her in a closet for a very long time, like a really small closet, and that she was raped multiple times by a couple of the members, the prosecution tried to argue that she actually had consensual sexual relationships with two of the men, and they also brought up her sexual history from prior to the abduction, which doesn't seem entirely relevant.
Yeah, well, you putting out with these guys, you're gonna put out with these
so
guys
that's
over
what
here.
I mean about
That's
the
the fucking
judge
thing at a
being
time.
like biased against her a little bit. It seemed like
That doesn't
because
make sense to me.
yeah, that's like that really shouldn't be admissible
No.
because it's not germane to the case. Like your sexual history prior to.
I think some of them fucking LSLA guys, they just saw her and they go, well, she's vulnerable. Fucking, if I ask her to hit, she'll probably say yeah, and she probably did.
Yeah, I mean, she basically said
she's like whatever.
that even if they weren't, I mean, the implication was even if they weren't like physically directly threatening her at the time, that she was always under constant threat. That it's like if I didn't do what they wanted,
Then
like
she'd be punished.
like I would be killed or beaten or whatever. She's like at the bank robbery where she very famously said, up against the wall, motherfuckers, or whatever, like on the tape, they were saying, well, I had to like appear really enthusiastic about doing it because they wanted it to look like she was in on it because that, and she's like, if I wasn't enthusiastic about it, like I would have gotten punished later. That was the argument that she was making.
I don't think that's what it was. I think it was something kind of like some of the things that I've seen when I was going through basic training at fucking Sand Hill down at Fort Benning. You had some recruits that got spooked by basic training, and we were going through during wartime, and they started to chicken out. But we had real drill sergeants back then. I mean, we were fucking scared of them, man. Drill Sergeant Howell, and fucking I've looked him up. He was one of the best dudes I ever. Because he ended up coming to our unit in the 506 later on. It was like something out of the damn movies, man. He was this big old fucking black dude. He was cool as shit, and we were fucking terrified of him. And shit, man, where was I going? What would happen sometimes is you'd have a guy, and you could tell he didn't want to be there, and that he wanted to fail. He wanted to go home. But they would fucking double and triple down on him and scare the shit out of that dude so bad that he would fucking double down on the training and try to man up, and he would power through it. And all of a sudden, he then enjoyed it. Kind of like, I don't know, breaking someone in to like a BDSM situation. It might have been a situation like that with her. She didn't want to do it until they pushed her so hard. She's like, oh, this is kind of fun. Better than being in that damn fucking closet. You know what I mean? Now I can got power over the situation. And they're
Yeah.
approving of me. The ones that were
like
fucking
I
attacking
said,
me now
I'm
approve
sure
me.
it's a lot more
It's like that.
complicated
Yeah.
than because
Yeah.
these kind of dynamics like this are just like not. It's not cut and dried. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the fact that it's like, oh, we had to be pointing a gun in her face. It could have
Yeah.
been like some other kind of power dynamic.
Because we'd
going
have
on.
guys in basic that they could have been fucking kicked out at any minute, weak. And then all of a sudden would man up and everybody in the fucking platoon would like fucking cheer them on. And they were a loser before. And all of a sudden now they're a hero. And fucking years later they're still in service. Fucking totally different dudes. Totally rebuilt. They're men, you know. Just because that dude fucking made that one decision to fuck it, I'm going kamikaze. And the synergy of it. The wolf pack is a very fucking seductive force in fucking the life of a young man. When you're around a bunch of other young men, they can really fucking influence and change you. Hopefully for the better, if it's a group of good dudes, you know what I mean? But no, that's probably what happened. Wolf pack got her.
Another thing too that happened, what I was saying before about the whole some of the other SLA members and the prosecution arguing that she had consensually like had a relationship, particularly with Willie Wolf, who was one of the members of the SLA, who she later accused of raping her. One of the other members of the SLA said, oh, well, she still has this necklace or this little kind of like, it was like a little Colombian artifact kind of thing, like on a chain or whatever. And it's like she still had that in her purse at the trial. And so the prosecution was making a big deal about that. Like, it's like, oh, why would you keep a piece of jewelry that a rapist gave you?
What'd she say?
She basically said she kept it because she thought it was like an expensive artifact and it was worth something, or that she just liked art or something. Which, like I said, sounds a little... But, you know, I don't know.
I think it was more like Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah, like I said.
Might have been a mixture of stuff. Maybe he put the fucking... She was scared of him, but fucking... There was like mixed feelings there.
People are complicated.
Yeah,
man.
might have been
It's
mixed
never
feelings.
just like black and white.
Maybe
It's
she's
always...
like, you know what? The dude is pretty brave, and he has these other good qualities about him. Maybe he's handsome. So there's kind of that Che Guevara kind of panache. You know, you don't know. I hadn't seen.
I mean, the thing about these dudes, as fucked up as these people were, like they had some ridiculous ideas and they did some horrible shit. I mean, when push came to shove, they died for what they believed in.
They did fight.
They didn't surrender.
Yeah, they did fight.
So I guess that's something.
So
Mr. 88 says, I came into my own as a middle schooler because of absentee and abusive parents. Yeah, that'll happen. I knew I wanted to succeed and had to mature really fast to make sure my circumstances didn't derail me. In part, that's why I completely skipped the late teen, early 20s behaviors like partying and drinking. Yeah, I didn't.
You missed out.
Well, no, I didn't really do the partying and drinking thing until I was in my 30s.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, I drank and clubbed a little bit like I was in my 20s, but not like crazy.
I did it in my teens because at the time I was living in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and it was legal. So I was in clubs at 15, 16. 16, I think. Going to nightclubs legally, drinking. Having fun. It was like a Duran Duran video, man. You'd have loved it. And it wasn't like the fucking immature fucking binge drinking. I did some of that, but it was better just to actually go to a club, like a South American club. Great. Had a good time.
Tyler, the guy, said, Tom's right about the Wolfpack thing. I had a group of friends that were complete douchebags, and it kind of rubbed off on me for a while. Yeah. Glad I cut ties with them. Yeah, that's why, you know, I hate to say, but your parents are probably right about, like, the people that you hang out with. Like, it's like, I don't like you hanging out with those boys. They're probably
it's
right.
Hormonal, man. It's hormonal. When I was on trend, man, I just wanted to rejoin the Wolfpack. If I saw bad motherfuckers, like I'm hanging out with the fucking warlocks and shit for their fucking bike night, I'm like, I'm going to hang out with these dudes. You want to hang out with fucking the biggest, most frightening, most ugliest motherfuckers around, you want to hang out with them. Little guys that look weak, you just want to beat them up. I mean, and it's, you want them out of the area.
That's not good, Tom.
And that is just like ultra gendered fucking, that's like something out of the animal kingdom. Yeah. But the thing is trend isn't normal. It's 5 times the power of testosterone per cc, and I was taking a lot of it for 5 months because I thought I could, because I was under the effect of it. Yeah. And it took me about 2 months to fully recover to normal. Wouldn't you say about 2 months?
I don't know. It was a long time.
Yeah.
Too long. Mr. 88 says, about male synergy, I have 2 teen sons, and remind them that the more boys in a group, the lower the expressed IQ.
yeah. But the higher the fun factor. We used to burn down the fucking woods out in Mississippi and swing through fucking fire, man, gasoline. We would swing through fire on a rope and shoot each other with baby guns and then shoot stuff with your dad's shotguns and fucking, man, we had so much fun. Ride around on fucking 3-wheelers. That was even before 4-wheelers. And then wreck and roll 3-wheelers. I don't know how we survived it.
I guess a few did. A few probably didn't.
I took a 3-wheeler and fucking ran it through a gate that had been open, and there was a turn there, and I accidentally hit the gate, and it was a wrought iron gate, and in between the fucking bars and the gate was about 3 feet. I hit it at about 30 miles an hour and went flying off the front of the fucking 3-wheeler and went in between those bars. Clean in between those bars, went through the gate and landed on the ground. Had I been a little fatter, or had I hit the gate just a little bit to the right or the left, that fucking bar would have went right through my head. I don't know how the fuck I survived that shit. I was about 13 or 14, man. Damn. Just stupid, man. Stupid. It was fun, though.
Kids do stupid shit.
We used to fucking...
Like I said, why do you think the Darwin Awards books are like 99% dudes?
That was down in Mississippi. Fucking going 45 or 50 on those 3-wheelers. Steal your dad's 3-wheelers. Let's run this shit. We were trying to shoot bottle rockets. Had guys in the back shooting bottle rockets at each other. Oh, man. Those are the days, man.
So yeah. All right. So basically, what Ben was saying about the necklace or whatever doesn't explain why she would carry it if she thought it was some important artifact. It should have been somewhere safe. Yeah, I kind of thought about that too. That was the only thing that kind of gave me pause. Like, why would she still have that? Like, if I got raped by some dude, it's like, I'm not keeping anything that motherfucker gave me for sure. So it's like, I don't know. But like I said, that doesn't negate the Stockholm Syndrome thing, because she could have gotten all involved and like fallen in love with the dude and everything like that, and it would have been,
I think it was,
you know what I mean? I think it was more that than coercion. So I don't know if she was necessarily raped. I mean, I guess she was raped in the sense that, yes, she was abducted.
She was the captive.
So she was a captive. So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, technically it is rape no matter what happened, whether she said yes or not. But I
think it was the kind of situation where you see out of those movies where a girl ends up on a pirate ship and the captain is cute as fuck. It's Johnny Depp. You know what I mean? She's a captive, but hey, you were talking about Johnny Depp. He's kind of fucking dashing. It might have been a situation like that.
Maybe.
It's rape.
Yeah.
She's a captive.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, let's not make any mistake about that.
Yeah, that's what she's not in her right mind.
Yeah.
And she's been taken out of her environment. Let me remind you people, kidnapping is a life sentence.
That's a felony, y'all.
In most American states, she was kidnapped.
Yeah, she was taken out her apartment and put in the trunk of a car.
And when you do that, it puts a woman in a psychological position of psychological weakness to where you can take advantage of her. She's a lot more impressionable, especially at 19. So it's rape.
Well, because she doesn't want to get fucking killed.
Yeah, she doesn't want to get killed. And
or whatever it is you're planning on doing.
Maybe these dudes are also kind of impressive too, but it doesn't matter. They've taken her out of her environment and put her in this situation, so she's not really. It's not her free will, and she's also afraid of punishment. So no, it's rape. So they're right.
Yeah,
because there's a synergy to that. She's not truly consenting.
Yeah,
she didn't run away to join them.
I mean, that would be a different situation if she had actually, of her own free will, said, hey, I'm going to go join the revolutionaries.
Yeah, that's totally different.
But she didn't do that.
Right.
She didn't do that. So I think that anything that happened after the abduction was probably just like...
Yep, they put her in the situation.
They put her there. She didn't choose... She didn't choose it at the start. So, So like I said, because Patty Hearst had been put on the stand and because apparently the jury was not impressed with her defense... she was actually convicted. She was convicted in 1976 of bank robbery and using a firearm during the commission of a felony. Now, she was actually given... the first sentence she was given was 35 years.
God damn.
But then the judge, the original judge who didn't like her, he died. So they got another judge in there. And he actually ended up giving her 7 years. So she got a 7-year sentence.
She probably had to do 3.5.
No, she didn't. Just, you know,
okay.
You're jumping ahead.
They got it out.
You're jumping ahead.
Okay.
So actually, once she went to jail, she started having, she had some medical problems, like she had a collapsed lung and some shit like that. And she had to have surgery. So she actually couldn't testify at the other trials, like from the other SLA members, like the Harrises and all of them. Now, she was also, because of security, because it was high profile, they put her in solitary confinement for a time. Her dad, being rich, like hired a bunch of bodyguards and shit like that. She actually had like dead rats like turning up in her bed. Like the other prisoners didn't really like her, at which point they were just, that's why he hired the bodyguards and shit like that. Now she actually, her bail got revoked in May 1978. She had a bunch of appeals pending, but they all failed. She was trying to go to the Supreme Court. They turned her down. And basically what ended up happening was that the Harrises, the couple that had been with her for the, you know, on that, shoplifting thing, they got convicted on kidnapping, and, they got 8 years each. So they served their entire sentences and then got out. But around this time, speaking of the Jim Jones case, Representative Leo Ryan, who was the guy that was shot down there at Jonestown, by the way, prior to him being shot, obviously, he was actually had a petition to get Patty Hearst out of prison. So he started doing that. Like I said, John Wayne was one of the guys that he came out advocating for, saying it's like, especially because the Jonestown thing had just happened, and he's like, you know, nobody believes she got brainwashed, even though you believe like 900 odd people got brainwashed. He talked about that. So basically, there was kind of like a bunch of people kind of got together, and then there was like an open letter, or like a big article that was printed in the media that was addressed to President Jimmy Carter, saying like, please release her. She was brainwashed. You know, she didn't really, you know, she was kind of forced to do what she was doing. So Jimmy Carter did actually commute her federal sentence to the 22 months served. So that's all she ended up serving, was 22 months, and then they let her out. She was actually let out 8 months prior to her first, what would have been her first parole hearing. Now, there were conditions to her release. She was let out in February of 1979. You know, she was on probation. Like, they kept an eye on her. She couldn't, like, move around freely, all that kind of stuff. However, in 2001, she was actually given a complete pardon by Bill Clinton when he was leaving office. So she had all of her civil rights restored in 2001. Now, after she was released from prison in 1979, she actually married one of her bodyguards. His name was Bernard Shaw, not that one, not the one from CNN or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
It's a different guy. That was one of her bodyguards. So she married him, which, I don't know. I was watching one video and she said that's a little weird that she ended up marrying one of her bodyguards.
Probably not. They were together a lot.
That's like I didn't think
they knew each other, and maybe
right.
he had a good opinion of her.
Yeah.
Because I think she was not guilty. I think she was in a bad situation. He felt sorry for her.
Maybe.
I can see how it could happen.
Yeah, I could kind of see that too. I could see it.
She wasn't in her right mind. This all fucking hinges on the fact whether or not that abduction was real. If that abduction was staged, no, she was guilty.
Then yeah, obviously.
If that was a real abduction, then she wasn't guilty.
Then everything that happened after that was suspect.
It was coercion and brainwashing. And if you fucking, like I said, go listen to that audiobook, Rape of the Mind. The person who's being brainwashed, depending on what kind of brainwashing it is, feels guilty about who they are, and they feel that they're wrong. Okay? That's how they get changed. She felt guilty about coming from a rich family. She was trying to atone for that. But what they did to her was fucking criminal. What are you talking about? No.
Yeah, it's still criminal no matter who you do it to.
Yeah.
And Winterfell Forever said...
And she's not fucking guilty of what her parents did. If they did anything wrong, they probably didn't do anything wrong. They're just making money. Everybody does it. They weren't taking advantage of poor people per se. I mean, if selling things to people is taking advantage of poor people, You're not taking advantage of poor people until you're fucking rigging the political system. That's when you fucking take advantage of poor people. I'm going to use this.
Winterfell said, undoubtedly was her heiress status helped her in her release. If it was a regular schmo or a black person, I doubt the justice system would have been so kind. Yeah, and I agree with you on that. And yeah, a lot of other people would. I agree with you also. Sure, it really helped that she was a white woman, an attractive white woman from a very, very wealthy family. You know, had it been some broke dick motherfucker who wasn't good looking or was from a minority or something like that, I'm sure it wouldn't have gone. I'm sure there wouldn't have been like all of this, you know, falderall about like, oh, please let her out and all this other kind of stuff. So in that way, you know, I hate to say it, but yeah, if you're a pretty white woman that's young and stuff like that, you're probably going to get away with some shit that maybe other people wouldn't get away with. So and she came from a rich family too, which always helps. Because those motherfuckers get away with everything. So I'm sure that helps. But I'm not saying that... I mean, that doesn't negate the fact that probably, you know, she didn't... Like I said, she didn't choose to join them. I don't think. Like Tom was saying, like, yes, if the kidnapping had been staged, I don't think it was. It's a possibility, sure. But, you know, and I have seen some people bring it up. I don't think that's the case. But if that was the case... then yeah, that she'd be completely on the hook and responsible for everything that happened subsequently. If she was abducted, which I think she was, then everything after that is a gray area because she didn't choose to join them. She didn't choose to go along with any of that stuff, and she just ended up going along with it for whatever reason, whether it was Stockholm Syndrome, whether they were forcing her, whatever. So... But, you know, the fact of the matter is, if she was actually abducted, then, yeah, she didn't choose to do any of that stuff. So, yeah, so she got married. They had a couple of kids. Her daughter, I think I read this somewhere, is married to Chris Hardwick, I thought.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. Who is Chris Hardwick?
He was on Talking Dead. He's like that funny guy.
Oh, that guy.
Like, yeah. I'm pretty sure I read that someplace, but I don't know if that's true. She actually ended up publishing a memoir later on, like in the 2000s, I think, like that. And because of some shit that she said in there, they were actually thinking about bringing up some new charges against her, but they didn't. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, her and John Waters were friends, and she was in several of his movies. She was in Cry Baby. I had forgotten about that. And
they also had Johnny Depp
and Tracy Lords.
Tracy
Lords was in a bunch of her and John Waters were friends too. She was in a bunch of his movies.
I remember Tracy Lords seeing her on VHS before people knew she was underage, man. Fucking New Wave Hookers 2, I think it was. Oh man, that's a fucking badass flick.
Have you ever seen Cry Baby though?
No, I've never seen it.
You told me you'd never seen any John Waters movies.
I don't think I've seen any.
You probably like Cry Baby. Yeah. That's a good one.
Tracy Lords was cute, though.
Iggy Pop's in it, too.
She got cuter as she got older. She was great in fucking Blade.
Yeah.
She did a little bit part in Blade. She was so cute. So funny. She married just a normal guy, a bartender, who didn't know who she was. And then when he found out, he's like, oh, you were a kid. Yeah. And she started her new life after that.
What a guy.
Yeah.
Most dudes would be like, ew.
No, she was just like, oh, really? Oh, that's you? And
you whore.
Like, oh, I don't, man. Well, you were just a kid.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, Patty Hearst was, like I said, in a bunch of John Waters movies. She was in Cry Baby. She was in Serial Mom, which is another great one that has Kathleen Turner in it. Pecker, Cecil B. Demented, which, like I said, was actually sort of loosely based on the actual Patty Hearst kidnapping case, but you know, with the circumstances changed a little bit. And also A Dirty Shame. Also, she was in Biodome, that Pauly Shore movie. Which, yeah. Okay. So eventually, like I said, now the SLA members that weren't killed in the siege, you know, in 1975, were later captured. Because like I said, there was like fucking 12 of them. You know what I mean? I think 6 of them were killed in the firefight. So the other ones were eventually got convicted and went to prison. Some of them, as I said, served their time and then got out and just became normal, productive members of society. Like some of them were interviewed on that documentary Gorilla that I watched earlier.
Yeah.
There was one woman though named Kathleen Solaya, I think is how you pronounce her last name. Now she didn't join until after the shootout. She joined it later. Holy shit!
God damn, we know you got a Harley, bro. We know you got guys in here that own Harleys. Yeah, making all that.
But yeah, so she actually joined after that whole shootout. And then she was like fucking putting bombs under police cars and all this other kind of shit. They didn't catch her until 1999. And then she actually got sentenced in 2002. And then it turned out too that like Bill and Emily Harris, William and Emily Harris, and another guy named Michael Borton, they actually got second-degree murder for killing that woman in the bank robbery.
Yeah.
So they got that. So they all did, and I heard like some of the testimony where they came out and they were like, you know, man, there's nothing we can say bring her back to life or anything like that. It's like we didn't mean for it to happen, and we feel really bad and all this other kind of stuff. So but yeah, they still went to prison. So as far as I know, Joseph Romero is, I think, the only one that's still in prison. He was one of the ones that was convicted for the original murder, like the Marcus Foster guy that they shot.
Yeah.
I think he's still in prison, but all the other ones have done their prison time and got out, or they're dead. So there's pretty much that. Patty Hearst is still. She does basically. She does interviews and shit like that. She's basically like a philanthropist nowadays. Giving money to like various causes. I think she's real big on like AIDS charities and stuff like that. But
okay, now the SLA members that survived. What did they say about her? Did they say that she was a member that joined them? Did they know that she was a captive? What was the deal?
From what I could determine, the two that they talked to on this documentary, they seem to make it think, and I don't know, this might just be, them covering their own ass. I'm not really sure. But they seem to think that, now it should be noted too that the two guys that they talked to, they were not, privy to, they weren't there like when the abduction happened, and I'm not really sure they were on board with that idea.
Okay.
Or they said that they weren't. They're like, when it happened, but they thought it was kind of cool because they're like, oh, we were getting all this attention because suddenly everyone was paying attention to us and we could say whatever we wanted and they would do it, and so they were kind of getting like a little bit of a power trip about it. But it did seem like they didn't say anything about mistreating her. They didn't say anything about, they basically said that she seemed like they were excited because she seemed like she was going along with them, and like she was turning against her parents, and she was, that's what I was saying. It seemed like they interpreted it as she was waking up to the reality, and she was like, oh, we like flipped her over to our cause. It seemed like that's what they were.
Now, would they have had access to her during the times where she was in the closet?
I don't know.
Or the supposed rapes.
I don't know.
They don't know. They just didn't mention that.
No, they didn't mention it.
Maybe they weren't there all the time. Maybe they just showed
up. Like I said,
there.
this was a very loose group. It wasn't super organized. I didn't get that impression.
Right.
It just seemed like just a kind of very loose group of people.
There's a chance that they probably didn't really know her story. She's just some chick that's there.
Right.
When they show up and she's there, they don't know where she came from. She just joined. That may be the situation. The dudes that really did know would have died probably.
Yeah, all the ones that were really in on the shit, like they were killed in the shootout.
So we don't have their testimony.
Right.
We would know the truth, or maybe we would know the truth because they would probably lie too.
Winterfell Forever said, I don't know if Jenny mentioned it earlier. I did. But there is a good documentary about the whole thing called Gorilla. Yeah, and it's right here on YouTube. You can watch it for free. I watched it earlier today, like before the show. And Mr. 88, we were talking about it probably helped her, one, that she came from a super wealthy family. That always helps. Be born rich if you can manage it.
Well, you can afford a defense.
Yeah, well, and
had she been poor, they'd have locked her up and thrown away the key. They
wouldn't
even cared.
And also, like I said, be a cute white woman. That also usually helps.
Yeah, but they throw those away though too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird because I kind of feel like cute white women, if you get like caught for a crime, it's probably in your advantage. But like if you're just walking around in the street, like you're a serial killer target. So it's like kind of like one or the other. You know what I mean?
A lot of it has to do with your record. You know, she could be a cute white woman, but if she's got fucking 3 or 4 convictions on her and she's got a bet, no, they're gonna fucking lock your ass up.
Yeah.
In a situation like this, bank robbery, you're gonna do time. Cute white woman doesn't do anything. You're gonna do time.
Well, that's kind of the thing is that even though, I mean, I think it was only later, like pressure from the media and everything like that, and people that were kind of, advocating for her, because the judge and the jury in that case, they were perfectly willing to put her in prison.
Yeah.
They didn't buy her story. They didn't buy the brainwashing thing. They said, no, she looked like she participated in that shit willingly. And I kind of feel like, I know this maybe is weird to say, but I kind of feel like during the trial, it's almost like they forgot that she got abducted.
Yeah.
Because they were concentrating so much on, how much, culpability she had for the bank robbery and everything like that. I'm like, but it's almost like they almost kind of swept that under the carpet. I was like, well, that being the inciting incident is kind of like a big deal.
It depends a lot. With the cute white woman factor, I think it's mostly stereotype. It depends on what the crime is. There was a cute white woman, bodybuilder, just fantastic fucking plump fucking body. She's just hot, big boobs and shit. And she's making porn with her husband. And the husband was the fucking freak. He was a pervert. And he had her do a scene with a 10-year-old boy. Yeah. Well, that shit leaked out. She got caught. She's doing like 30 years for it. So is he.
Well, so I was going to say, yeah.
Cute white women didn't help there. Okay.
Well, I kind of feel like if it's a kid is the victim, then then all bets are off.
You gotta,
doesn't matter what you look like.
Yeah. So this, it's fucking, you can't go along with these fucking stereotypes. Yeah, and like I said, that dude who was fucking going out killing all those teenage girls, his girlfriend was a fucking cute white woman. Well, that cute white woman fucking killed 2 16-year-old girls after making them dig their own graves. That's how fucking brutal that bitch was. So no, I think that bitch got life.
Yeah.
So
Victor says Serial Mom is such a great movie. It really is. I mean, that's what you probably love that movie. It's fucking fantastic. It's like a black comedy.
Yeah.
Winterfell Forever said, "Oh yeah, I wanted to kind of get into this too a little bit." It says also worth mentioning that in the group there were 2 other women. And as radical as they were, they came from pretty standard middle-class backgrounds. Yeah, pretty much everybody other than Donald DeFreeze, who, like I said, was an escaped convict. I'm not entirely sure, I think he was in prison for robbing a prostitute. So it wasn't like for murder or anything like that. But he escaped from prison. But I think all the other members were just like regular middle-class white people. Winterfell Forever said, it seems to me very unlikely that they would be okay with harsh treatment or rape to another woman. And that is actually what the prosecution argued at the trial when she argued that that 2 of the dudes had raped her multiple times. The prosecution argued, well, isn't this group feminist? And why would they allow that to happen? You know what I mean? It's like, because they had women that were members, and it's like that was kind of part of their whole ideology, and they found it unlikely that they would allow that to happen. Like I said, I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's what the prosecution argued.
There's a bunch of different kinds. When you say rape, you have to understand each state has different legal definitions. There's strong arm, there's forcible, and then there's another called aggravated. And I think strong arm is when it's not forcible, which is like by force. Okay, strong arm was you've weaseled your way into a woman. You do this, you're gonna have sex with me, or I will tell your job this and that.
Right. So you don't really have choice.
You don't have choice. Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Right. So I would say that this was fucking on par with like strong arm.
Yeah.
She had been captured. She went along with it because she was afraid. So probably. But then there was probably mixed emotions because there's Stockholm syndrome going on.
Yeah.
She might have liked the guys too.
Yeah.
But she didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And she had been captured. She was put in that position.
I mean, like I said, we do keep coming back to that.
Right.
It's like she didn't actually just like run there and say, "Hey, I want to join the revolutionaries." Like
a captive cannot consent, so therefore that's rap. That's a rap.
Yeah.
A captive can't consent.
Like I said, as long as we're positing that the abduction was not
real.
Staged,
Right,
which, like I said, I don't have any reason to believe it wasn't.
Yeah.
That it was staged.
Because you're putting on her a bunch of psychological pressure. She's a captive. She's not in sound judgment. She's not in right mind and sound judgment. You know, so that's the way depending on the state, that's the way a state law would probably look at it.
Yeah,
that makes sense to me. She doesn't have calm reasoning and cool reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, so she did get convicted at first, but she really only served like 22 months in prison, and then she was let out. And like I said, she was given a complete pardon in 2001 by Bill Clinton. When he was leaving, that was one of his pardons that he gave. And since then, she seems to have had a completely normal life, just having kids and doing shit that you do.
There's this song that I like by this guy named Warren Zevon. He's kind of a fucking folk singer. And he had a song called Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner. We used to get drunk in Egypt.
That's such a good song.
Yeah, we used to get drunk in Egypt and sing it. It was about a Norwegian mercenary going down into Africa to help the Bantu, him and his boys. And he gets betrayed by a fucking CIA agent that was in the group named Van Owen, who shot fucking Roland's head off. He was the best Thompson gunner the unit had ever seen. And from then on out, you could see the ghost of fucking Roland, this headless body, strolling through the night, mowing down enemies. You could see it under the fucking muzzle flash of his Thompson gun. And at the end of the song, one of the last persons in the song he kills is Patty Hearst. He said Patty Hearst heard the burst of Roland's Thompson gun and bought it. But I have to say, fucking Warren was probably wrong on that one. He seemed to be fucking, I don't think he seemed to be aware of fucking the pressures that a little 19-year-old girl could be put under. She was brainwashed.
It's funny because I had heard about the Patty Hearst case like all through the 70s because like I said, I was a kid in the 70s, so you kind of heard about it on the news and stuff. I didn't know a great deal about it until, y'all are going to laugh, I looked it up in the 1980s because there was a band called Camper Van Beethoven, and they had an album called Our Beloved Revolutionary Sweetheart. And they had a song on there that was called Tania, and it was about her. And I was reading about it, and I said, oh, I remember kind of like hearing about that in the 70s. So that's when I started like looking it up because of that Camper Van Beethoven song that was like about her. So that's like pretty funny. So she did, so you can see like what a big deal it was because it really kind of seeped into the public consciousness. And like somebody said too, like Stephen King like wrote about it a lot. Like, he refers to it a lot in a lot of his stories, which, yeah, I did remember. That and the Kitty Genovese case, he seems, like, super obsessed with that as well. Which, like I said, I've been wanting to do a show about that, too, but we haven't done that yet.
I got that wrong in that song. They wasn't helping the Bantus, helping the Congolese. I think against the Bantu. That's a great song. Listen to it. Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner.
It is a good song.
It's a great soldier drinking song about mercenaries. Yeah.
All right, so it's 10:15. I really have to go to bed.
Okay. All right, yeah.
So I guess we're gonna wrap this all up for the evening. I feel like this came out good. This is an interesting show. I told you.
Yeah.
I got like really into this topic, like over the last few days while I was researching it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it and found it interesting. And so we will be back on Friday night doing our sidetrack show, which is always fun because we can talk about whatever the fuck we want to. I mean, more than we usually do. So hopefully you guys can join us for that. So thanks everybody for dropping by this evening. Oh my goodness. And we'll see you again on Friday night. Good night.